Hi everyone. Welcome to ACAD Asia. ACAD Asia is a Singapore-based impact-driven edtech startup that empowers the largest online community of education institutions and educators in Asia to upskill and reskill themselves to improve the learning outcomes for their 21st century learners. On acadasia.com, educators can access four specific services. First, CollabEd, a social networking service that empowers education institutions to build their international network from all over Asia, and where individual educators can join a wide range of communities of teaching learning practice and engage in peer-to-peer learning. Second, SkillEd, a professional development service that empowers educators to upskill and reskill themselves by accessing more than 1,000 hours of professional development content, all with formal CPD accreditations. In addition to this, academic managers from education institutions can track, measure, and improve the efficacy of all professional development that their faculty access on the platform, thus leading to better learning outcomes for their students. Third, DesignEd, the easiest course builder on the planet. In 5 simple steps, this service empowers educators to build fun, engaging, and quality content for their learners. Furthermore, third-party tools like Canva, Google, etc. are fully integrated right into DesignEd. Fourth, CertifyEd, a digital credentialing service that empowers education institutions to design, award, and track fully verifiable and tamper-proof digital micro-credentials and certificates on the blockchain. Join the largest community of educators in Asia who are already using the platform and sign up for your free lifetime membership at www.acadasia.com today.
Hello, everybody. Good morning, good day to all of you, wherever you are joining us from all over the world, especially from our friends here in Asia, Southeast Asia, and India, of course. I am Roy Paton, the co-founder and chief community officer of ACAD. We are an impact-driven edtech business, and we are here to empower educators everywhere. So glad to have you all again at Saturday School. As you know, we usually have weekly events, online events for all our community. And this week has been actually pretty special because, as you know, it's the holidays towards the year end. I hope all of you are going to be celebrating your holidays quite well and restfully. Of course, our hearts go out to all our friends in the Ukraine. Unfortunately, there's been recent reports that there have been attacks, and it's quite cold in the winter time there now. So let's please pray for our brothers and sisters in Ukraine that they can, weather the storm and have a good year end. Nevertheless, again, it's quite a special week because usually we only have one session per week, but today we have two. We just came from ACAD Asia Teacher Spaces last Thursday, and if you get a chance, please make sure, I'll just share my screen really quickly, to be able to rewatch or re-enroll in that course. And there you'll be able to see, one moment, because I noticed the last time when I was sharing my screen, it did not display properly. Okay, so I'm just gonna share my screen. If you did not catch us last Thursday, to make sure, this is the course that you will need to join for that. It's my way of designing assessment. So we had Jose Pietro from University of Open University in Catalonia, Spain. So make sure to be able to join this course, enroll here, and you can earn CPD points in the Philippines for that. And of course, you still get your digital certificate for this if you're outside the Philippines, no problem. So please be able to rewatch, reflect, answer the assessments there. Okay, but today, same week, we have a second session. Okay, so this is amazing. We have today for Saturday School our guests from Orange Slates. If you recall, last Saturday, we had them last week for Project-Based Learning 101. So this time they're coming back. They're rejoining us again because today we'll be discussing Assessment Design Principles 101. So it's a full 3-hour session today, a deep dive into assessment design principles. And we're very happy to have Orange Slates back with us again. So before I introduce our speakers, okay, again, today for our topic, for assessment design, we will learn to map the learning outcomes with assessments and how to integrate assessments as part of our teaching learning planning process, because I think this is our whole month of December We've been talking about online learning assessments. How do we get the most engagement? How do we maintain academic integrity and make sure that the students are really submitting the right assessments and their own output rather than go into extracurricular things and other things that we all are aware of sometimes happens, right? So we try to remedy that by designing our assessments very well. These assigned assessment principles 101 will help you to become a ready reckoner when you create assessments and learning and design for your learners. Okay, so very exciting, very interesting session today. So how do we do that? Just again, another reminder: it's free to watch our session today. For our 3-hour session, you're more than welcome to join us for the whole session. We'll make this available on all our social media channels. But if you would like a certificate that will accompany this session, today's session will be a paid course. So you'll have to go to Acad Asia and pay the fee so that you can get the certificate. But the entire session for now, it's free to watch. So please join us today. All right. So I'll show you how you can enroll in the course later towards the end of the session. But for now, I'll introduce our speakers today. So first of all, I think you met her again last week, and she's joining us again. She is the project head for Orange Slates, and she's been, I think, one of the pioneer team members of Orange Slates from the beginning. And as you know, Orange Slate's vision is to prepare educators for the future. And they do this by bringing together educators from across the globe to form a community to learn from each other, various skills, pedagogy, strategies, and maximizing learning outcomes, which is why we at Acad Asia are very proud to have Orange Slates with us today. So here, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Project Head at Orange Slates, Ms. Vishali Sheth. Vishali, glad to have you again today. I'm sorry, Vishali, I think you're muted.
Once again, very good morning and namaste from India. I am Roshali, and thank
Namaste.
you so much, Roy, for having us here. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishali. Namaste as well. And of course, our second speaker who's also joining us, we're very privileged to have her. She has a dual master's, a master's in education gold medalist from the University of Mumbai. And she also has a master's in arts from Mahatma Gandhi University in Kerala. And she trained over 7,500 teachers in various aspects of the NEP 2020, innovative learning environments, competency-based learning, multidisciplinary learning, creating cultures of thinking, pedagogical leadership, and many others. Very glad and proud to have her with us, the co-founder and COO of Orange Slates, Ms. Sindhu Aven. Sindhu, pleasure to have you.
Good morning. Thank you, Roy. Thank you for having us. And a very warm good morning and a good afternoon, perhaps, to some of you out there. But namaste and honored to be here. Thank you once again very much. Excited and looking forward to the Saturday school.
Thank you so much, Sindhu. I just want to do a quick shout out before I turn over the session to you both. We have our friends, of course, from Philippines. Hello, good morning to all of you. We have also friends from India. It's very early there at your time of the day. So thank you for joining us. Namaste. And of course, from Indonesia, hello. Sometimes we have friends from Africa and Cambodia even joining as well. So hello, everybody. Fantastic morning to all of you. So please enjoy our session today. It'll be quite a lengthy session, but we'll have a break in between. So don't worry, we'll have enough time for everybody to participate actively and re-energize. Okay, so stretch out a little bit. I hope you have your drink beside you, and I turn it over to Vishali Sindhu. Have a great session, everybody. I'll just be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. Thank you so much. And yes, welcome once again to this Saturday school, where it's going to be a 3 hours short session. I say short because there is so much to cover only in 3 hours. So, welcome to Saturday school. And just a disclaimer we want to give before we start the session. I know it's early morning in some parts where you are joining in. It's middle. It's going to be afternoon. We have so many activities planned for you, so we want you to be the best. You have the best energy right now. There is going to be a lot of interaction, lot of opportunities where you can ask us questions, lot of opportunities where we will ask you questions and you have to answer. Okay, so yeah, a lot is going to happen in this 3 hours. So you can now fasten your seat belts so we can start our learning journey. I'll just present my screen. Sindhu, you're on mute.
Let's begin. Looking
Yeah,
forward.
perfect. So, yes, today's topic is assessment design. And what we are going to do here is we are going to assess the way we assess. We are going to check if the way we assessed is the best way possible, or is there a scope of improvement that can make the assessment better, maybe the learning better or different. And yeah, let's see what we are going to do. Let's go ahead.
And Rishali, we'll
And
probably start with some. Okay, that's us again on screen. So,
yeah,
we've been introduced, and so we'll move on from there.
yeah,
And probably start with something which is very, very realistic to all of us, right? We've all been through this journey of applying for a driving license. And I'm trusting all of us have done it either on a two-wheeler requirement. People like me can't do that, and a four-wheeler requirement. And there are people who learn through this journey of trying to get a driver's license. So I'm going to quickly ask this question, right, Roshali? Am I on track? So I'm going to ask this question: how many of you here have struggled to get your learner's license, or was it very easy? I just want either response. Was difficult, easy. Quick ones in the chat. Was it difficult or was it easy?
yeah. So mine, I'll just tell you my experience, Sindhu. License, I don't have a two-wheeler license, and trust me, I don't know whether I'm going to get it or not. Four-wheeler, yes, it was not as difficult.
Great.
Yeah, it was, yeah, not
Okay,
difficult.
great. So it
What
wasn't too
about our
difficult for you.
participants? No,
So
easy. Yeah, we
Anvita
have.
says easy. Okay, great. So if it is easy, so that's good. What we're going to try and do right now is give you a small activity to see how it went for you. Okay. Yes, Vishali, over to you.
Yeah, so we'll be sharing. Okay, so not difficult. Okay, not easy is not the word, but not
Not
difficult.
difficult.
Okay,
Okay, easy. So lots of people saying easy.
okay, good. What we're going to do is we're going to share a link in the chat. Okay, in that link, you will have to arrange in a chronological order about what happened first, then what happened in your journey of getting a license. Okay, just repeating myself, I am sharing a link here in the chat where you have to arrange the events in a chronological order, starting from what happened first when you applied for the driving license to you getting the driving license. Okay, so you have the link in the chat. Please click on the link and you'll have to arrange in a chronological order. Okay, let me see if I'll just stop sharing my window. Yeah. Yeah, you have 30 seconds. You can read. Okay, you have 1 minute. You can read and arrange in a chronological order the events to get a learner license or a driving license. We have already got 30 responses. Awesome. Yeah, you may find the journey different from different in different countries. So, still loading in your view. Okay.
I'm
We
trusting it's
have
working for the others. Vishali, we have
yes, it's
responses,
working.
right?
We have completions also. Perfect.
Perfect.
Nice.
Okay. Happen.
And those who have submitted are all in a correct order
Oh,
of what we
super.
have given.
Super. So it's telling us then pretty much across the globe the similarity is more than the difference in the sequence.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, Judy. Thanks. But, Judy, it's fairly simple, so we'll just cover it right now. So no worries. Okay.
I'll present my screen again. So we have fair number of completions.
Okay. Let's take a quick
Okay,
look.
this link will be with you so you can finish it later. I want you to come back on the presentation so that we can continue and we will start. So we had a journey, right? Like we discussed here in the chronological order. We applied for a driving license. So we had to fill a form. Then there was a small MCQ. So in India, we have to give a small objective kind of a test. If you pass that test, then you are eligible to start learning driving. Once you learn, so there is an authorized person who teaches you on his or her car, where they have brakes and clutch on both the sides of the driver side also, and the other
Learner.
side also, the learner side also. Okay. Once that stage is over, then you have to give a test in a controlled environment. Okay, and then you also learn on your own vehicle so that you become confident, and then you get the driving license. That is the journey that we take. Sindhu, what about you? I mean, I'm sure it'll be the
No, no,
same
no. I,
journey, right?
I don't want to even go there because I'm terrible at driving. My motor skills are really weak. So I'll skip this part. Okay. So So yes, however, the journey is the same. And what's interesting, and probably once you share the screen, Rishali, on yeah, okay, perfect. So what we wanted to also bring to your attention is that's really not the practice across the globe, right? So you have these environments about even getting a learner's license is the simplest MCQ. It does nothing to test your motor skills. It does nothing to test your comfort. And in many cases, what we've realized across the globe, of course, is every test is conducted in a very controlled environment. There is a predetermined patch. So where does an on-road test help? Obviously it'll help far more than in a controlled environment, and that's the point we were trying to arrive at, saying assessments are also in the same context. You don't want to have an assessment which is always a controlled environment assessment, which then can't be related from there to a real world scenario. So by the time you are on the road, you're going through the same trauma of, am I confident enough? Do I have the necessary, senses going back and forth? Is my left weaker than my right? Do I tend to tilt a little more? That happens only with significant practice. And this practice journey of learning how to shift gears in case of a manual car to not even looking there and not even thinking and changing gears is a question of competency, right? So this whole building of competency and giving an exam once you're competent is by the time you're actually on the real world. And thus is the context to saying we need to build competencies. We need to have a better mechanism than just an MCQ and a few hours and a controlled environment test in order for the competency to get built. And let's apply the same logic to our school systems and our classrooms. Right. Over to you, Rishali.
Great. So now let's ask questions to you now. Why do we ask questions? So for that, we are going to share a Menti link in the chat. Ethan, if you can share the Menti link in the chat. Why do we ask questions? Very simple, right? We teachers love to ask questions. We enter our classroom and we start bombarding with questions to our students. We ask, okay, define what is nutrition. Did you understand this concept? We also ask, did you understand this concept? Yes or no? Right? Why do we ask questions? This is a Menti link that is shared with you. You can answer why do we ask questions there. Hello, we have somebody from Bhutan. Welcome, welcome for the session. So we have Akanksha answering, to reflect on teaching learning process, we ask questions. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you so much for response. Why do we ask questions? Let's see some interesting responses on the Menti. We ask question to provoke thinking for clarity. Come on, teachers, we need more answers here. We ask questions to assess, to get clarity, to check understanding, to provoke thinking, to assess. We ask questions. All right.
Perfect.
To
To reflect
reflect
on
on teaching
teaching. Very
learning.
good. That's a brilliant response. Yeah. To
Yeah.
clarify the set topics, Joseph says. Great.
Awesome. So we have, I think, covered more or less all the all the points of why do we ask questions. So we ask questions to engage with learners, right? We want learners to be involved. So like here we are in a webinar mode, but still we are asking you questions so that we are sure that the learners are getting engaged with us and not just watching us as a movie, right? We want you to learn with us, engage with us. To stimulate discussion in throughout the session, you will see we'll be discussing a lot after posing questions to increase communication, to provide feedback. Yes, no, good, how we can do better, moving to the next level, right? To identify gaps and to check knowledge, of course, that's the basic premise of asking a question. All right. So if these are the reasons why we ask questions, what is the purpose of assessment?
We'll just pause for a second because there's some very interesting
Sure.
ones in the chat as well. So,
Sure, sure.
so there's of course, one response says to elicit points for discussion, which we did cover,
Yeah.
and to identify whether our learners have understood the lesson or not. And I think that's pretty much where we're coming to, right? Most of the time, where we say whether the child is understood, whether one individual child is understood, whether all of children have understood, and of course to receive teaching learning process feedback in a constructive way. So it's a two-way thing. For the teacher to modify, yes, agreed, very good. And to see how much they learn about the tackle lessons, yes, thank you so much, is to check the learning of the students. So lovely. So we've got lovely responses in the chat as well, Roshali. And I think the second part of this, when we talk about the purpose of assessment, and how we're going to go about doing that, we'll be covering, I think almost everyone said it, but let's do a quick run through.
Right. Um, thank you so much for this. Really, really nice responses, and the thought process, the wavelength is matching here, so that's really great. So, purpose of assessment is to identify the learning gaps, of course, help in taking necessary remedials, to understand the gaps, taking necessary remedials so that the student reaches to the next level or students does beyond what he or she has been doing it normally, right? And main is improve student learning, promote deeper learning, right? So that's the purpose of assessment. And in this session we are going to do multiple ways in which we can assess, and mainly the session name is assessment design. So there can be 1,000 ways of assessing a child. How will we design it effectively so that the learning outcome is met? So we are going to talk about this at various levels in this session. This is a very, very interesting discussion that we're going to have here, and I want you to pay attention, and you may be responding it on the chat as well. Sindhu, I'm going to ask you this question because I'm sure this you are the most eligible person to answer this right now with me. What was the assessment when you were student? So when I was student, my assessment was very different. When you were student, what was the assessment? As a student, what did you think and what happened? Can you share your experience?
So I think I went to a very regular school where it was simple, right? You studied in order to write for an exam, and assessment was just that one assessment. Either you had a class test, which was again an assessment where you were writing, or there was a at most there was a recitation competition if it was something to do with your speaking skills. But other than that, it was a summative examination twice a year. Very simple, nothing.
Very simple, right? So it was just a check mark that whether you have had, I'm sure this question would have been very common. Children, did you understand this? Right?
Agreed, yes. Agreed, yes.
Right? And now the assessments have really changed over time. Now we are focusing on conceptual understanding. So now we are assessing the conceptual understanding of the child and not just define, state, recall level questions. Now we are asking questions which are deeper, where the child is applying what he or she is learning, right? Uh, so as a student, my definition of assessment has also changed. As a student, I'm reflecting on what I did earlier and how I can build on it or how I can improve on this, right? Or what should be my next step? So suppose I scored really well in an exam. Now what next? How will I go to higher order from what where I am? As a child, also I'm thinking in that way for an assessment. right? As a teacher, it is not only a place where I get to know, okay, there is a learning gap, but I also know the attitude of my students. I also understand the skills of my students. So not only the knowledge part, but also the skill. So there'll be a child who will be really, really good at art, right? I get to know the skill of the child. There'll be somebody who will be really good at presentation, right? The
Yeah.
flow of ideas, logical thinking, reasoning. So as a teacher, I'm also assessing the skill and attitude of the child. As a parent, earlier it was the school is going to take the assessment. I will just go and check the report card. Now parents play a very important role. So in India, with a new national education policy coming in, we have a 360-degree report card. So when we say 360-degree report card, parents are also involved in giving feedback on the personality of the child, on the learning of the child. So parents are also playing a key role in this assessment, right? So now the things have really changed. Now the way assessment is taking place is to check whether the child is ready for future, and all the assessments are leading to that, right? um, we
A
have
few
really
things
nice
here. Yes,
responses here in the
yes. I
chat.
was just gonna say that. It's like I really like what this what's come in. Plenty of recitation, quick quiz is not much feedback. I mean, really speaking, right? It isn't
Yeah,
much
earlier
feedback.
then,
Earlier,
yeah.
earlier. It's the then that's the really landing up. And Akansha says also, I think Bella said that, right? Bella Rose said that.
Yeah,
And
Belarus.
Akansha says she had social studies examination phobia. And I think a lot of people can relate with the
Me
stress
too.
of recall. The stress of recall was pretty difficult. And Judy says it was all previous knowledge recollection that came by, and that's relatable for everyone. Okay, so here let's just look at the then and the now in the three levels that they are: the student, the teacher, and the parent. As a student, also, you always had a rank, right? I mean, I'm not sure that if it happened everywhere, but definitely in large parts of the globe, the ranking system had a huge role. So I was always in comparison mode with someone or the other. So in this case, as a student, I was looking at how am I doing in comparison with my classmates, and sometimes really you ask yourself, is learning worth the effort? I mean, there's just so much to learn. And then that question paper, the quantum that you're going to be assessed on sometimes is the greater worry, right? So this quantum. So we'll refer to the quantum in a little
So
while
I'll
coming
just I'll just add to this. When I was doing my masters, at that time I studied the syllabus more than my actual book because syllabus was so huge, and the quantum was so much that okay, I have to then do this elimination, that I will read this, I will not study this, I will read this. So it's really crazy. As a child, I was like, really, is it worth it? So I
up.
completely
Absolutely.
agree with you, Sindhu. Yeah.
Right. So here, on the other hand, as a teacher, you right, you had those lovely report cards to be filled out by hand, and each time you had a list of activities where you had to write something very specific to that child's either behavioral or what kind of improvement the child needed. But the thing is, all of that would be done primarily through memory, right? Because there wasn't too many anecdotal records being maintained at that time. So there isn't something to refer to which was progressive by nature. A grade 3 teacher did not hand over those notes to a grade 4 teacher when the child moved to the next year. And you lost a lot along the way. So I'm not sure about all of you, but at least some of you, I'm sure, would have concerns about an open day or a parent teacher meeting day where you had to remember each child by a specific level of feedback. So the then and the now, there's a significant there's a significant plus that you need to kind of manage right now. Let's look at the now, right? So for a student, now is comparison to self. Am I improving over time, right? So it is a comparison to where I was. You have a significant number of simple diagnostic tests that you can do to understand the concept clarity at the start, and you move over what's the process. Do I know what it means to succeed? So as in, do I get enough feedback to figure out where I need to work on and what I should do next? What help do I need and whom do I ask? So it's simple. The way it's structured for a child, there's a significant amount of inclusion and there's a significant amount of feedback that helps. And the quantum isn't like the chunk, right? It's broken down. Learning is sequenced well, right? As a teacher, I'm not only looking at what does one student need, I'm also looking at what do all students need. And I break it up. I'm not saying it's differential, but yeah, definitely inclusive for sure. And I work on strengths as a teacher, right? Student strength. There's also this thing about when you said, I love the responses that we got a little while earlier. I'm checking definitely one thing. Have the students understood what is being covered, right? And therefore, this whole competency conversation at each level, have you understood? Can we move on to the next? And I'm sure all of you create a kind of a vertical progression, right? So you'd want to know where integers is going to play a role in the higher grades and how strong that fundamental needs to be in order for the child to conquer the next level, right? And children get a significant amount of support from home as well, so it's brilliant, right? So you gather student performance, yes, you determine the level and help them up further. It's absolutely well said. Akansha has a question: why assessment, especially in India, is not learner friendly in senior levels? Because it's still very report card
Report
oriented
card
for
oriented.
entry into a system right now. And Akansha, that is slowly changing. We must accept the fact that with different boards coming in, so we'll see the changes as far as NEP is concerned as well. Yes, Gisela, it is the mastery of competencies. Very, 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 very true. And that's the trip that we are on. It is the mastery of competencies, right? Right, and develop communication and critical thinking. So if we are saying we're developing students for the future, that is the question that we're going to be answering. Are they able to express what they need to express? One, are they able to think beyond what they're closeted to think? We create these frameworks of thinking, and how can they go beyond that is the answer. So I really love the responses. Thank you very much. And now, yes, we shall focus on competency building, and that's our job. That's primarily what all of us in this space right now, in this workshop and session right now, are intending to do, must do, and that is what we are here for. Perfect. So now that the then and the now is taken care of, yes, Rushali.
So now let's plan our journey for today. All right. Today we are going to have an introduction to assessment design. We'll be creating a blueprint. How we can create a blueprint? What are the factors that affect a blueprint? What will be the template that we can use? What are principles of assessment design? We'll be practicing. It's an ongoing practice. We'll be practicing at various stages, and then we'll have an activity, and then we can take up questions. Okay. So this is the journey of our session, and we start with just a quick recap of Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy is here on screen. What we can do is, so there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 levels in Bloom's taxonomy. The lower ones are lower order thinking skills. They promote lower order thinking skills like recall, maybe describe, maybe discuss, explain what you already know, list. Again, all lower order thinking skills. We have higher order thinking like analyze, we evaluate, we can create something, right? We analyze, we differentiate between A and B, and to differentiate we need to know, and then we need to connect, and that's how we'll be able to analyze it, right? So these are various levels of Bloom's taxonomy. I hope you're aware. This is a quick recall I wanted to do because we are going to use Bloom's taxonomy as the base to create our blueprint, right? About
Absolutely.
how, yeah, so how we can have, we need lower order thinking skill questions. It doesn't mean that we give all higher order thinking and everybody will be able to answer that. That may not be the case, right? We need to give questions of lower order, but even lower order questions can be of some level, right? So we'll be working on this. This is just a recall image that I'm showing you. If it's blur, okay, we'll move on to the next slide. Don't worry, it's Bloom's taxonomy. I'm sure you are aware of Bloom's taxonomy. We'll be taking up again in the next slides as well. So yeah, so now assessment blueprint. So in assessment blueprint, blueprint is like a skeleton that we create of our assessment design, right? Now to create that skeleton, we need to understand what are the various types of assessment I can add in my blueprint, right? So we have three types of assessment that we are going to cater to: assessment for learning, assessment as learning, and assessment of learning. Okay, I've put it in this on the slide here. I would like you to read, and you can share in the chat what each means. So we start with assessment for learning and as learning. So while you are reading, and I need you to put it in the chat some examples of what you know as assessment for learning and assessment as learning. I'll just simplify assessment of learning. The third one that we have here are standardized tests that we take. These are all term and exams that we take, and this is to compare if the child knows more than other students in the classroom. Those are the kind of assessment of learning. But what are assessment for learning and assessment as learning? I want you to put it in the chat, assessment for learning and assessment as learning. Sorry. Huh. Anybody? Assessment for learning, assessment as learning. So you can take cues from the explanation here. When it is assessment for learning, it is written enable teachers to use information. And when it's as learning is written, it is involves students in the learning. If that cue helps. Assessment as learning, child will learn while doing the assessment. Assessment as learning, child will do correct. Yes, Namrata ma'am, child will learn himself, right? Assessment as learning, inquiry based. Yes, is a good example of inquiry based. So can you elaborate on it? How it is inquiry based? Child will also, everybody is explaining assessment as learning right now. Okay, so let's build on that. Assessment as learning. The child will play a key role in learning here. Assessment as learning and for learning both used as asset in the whole process. Yes, Akanksha ma'am. Yes, a very an overall response that assessment for learning and assessment as learning are actually assessments taken during the teaching learning process. It is an example of formative assessment, right? Assessment for learning, example, diagnostic test, formative test, summative test. Are you Googling it? I find a very googly answer here. Okay, just kidding. Yeah, correct. Yes, you're right. So, assessment for learning is usually for the teacher to understand where the students stand and what should be the change in the teaching process. Okay, but when we talk about assessment as learning, project based learning is a great example of assessment as learning, with the child where the teacher is the facilitator and the students take ownership of learning, and at different milestones there is feedback mechanism, there is a way in which students reflect on the activity. um okay, let me see. The first assessment of learning is purpose for the teachers to prepare what should be the right instructed material. That is assessment for learning, Judy. It is not assessment of, it is for the first one, assessment for learning, where teachers prepare the right instructional material. So it is teacher led training, if for in simple words, teacher led assessments. Okay, it will be used by teachers to understand and reflect on their own process of teaching. Assessment as learning is where students are assessing themselves while they are learning. So there is feedback, there is self reflection, there is self evaluation that will happen continuously. Formative assessments for monitoring progress, summative assessment to check mastery. Correct. So summative assessment is assessment of learning where it is taken usually towards the end of the year, and it is usually given ranking in the school, or maybe in a district, or maybe in an area or a country. So yeah, these are all standardized tests. So if the teacher knows the learning competencies, and he and she can question orally or written and use the HOTS. Correct. That is in class questioning. That is a general teaching learning journey that a teacher takes while he or she is in the classroom. Right. Assessment of learning is summative. Yes. Yes. Perfect. Great. So all teachers are now very clear about the types of assessments that we take in a classroom. Thank you so much for responding. This has been really nice. As learning, making portfolios. Learner monitor their own progress. Yes, learner monitor their own progress, make reflection. Perfect. Perfect. Great. So we move on to the next slide. Okay. Yeah, is the PP slide visible? Clearly, okay.
Yes, the slide's visible, and yes.
Okay. So I want you to look at this pyramid. I understand this slide is very populated with a lot of text. I understand, but this we'll spend a lot of time here for understanding the competency pyramid. Now we are talking about knowledge, we're talking about skills, we are talking about attitudes, right? We spoke about Bloom's taxonomy, we spoke about types of assessments that we can take. What we need to understand is when I take assessment in my class, or when I create the assessment design for my class or for my school, I need to have various levels where I can assess the different competencies for a child of a child. Okay. The first level is the nose, recall level, basic level, knowledge level. Okay. This is very important for a child because this is where the child is more confident, and that becomes a base on which the child then builds on. So, for example, on the blue side, on the left side, you can see the in the blue square, blue rectangles. These are all objectives. Okay, and on the right side, you can see other questions mapped to the objective. So we'll look at it one by one. In the nose level, my objective is introduce multiplication, maybe for math. Recall. So when I have an objective called introduce multiplication, my question is, what is the product of 5 and 9? Okay, simple recall level question. A child should know multiplication. The child should know that I need to add 9 5 times so that I get an answer. Okay, but it's very basic level. So my objective introduce multiplication. My response to that, my question to that objective, so that I achieve that objective, is one of the question is, what is the product of 5 and 9? Yes, it's 45. Perfect. Okay. The next, recall famous personalities in aviation. Now there can be multiple famous personality in aviation, right? There is somebody who invented airplane. There are so many people who tried different materials to make an airplane. Right? There was somebody who made a paper airplane and somebody who made a plastic airplane and so on. My question is, who invented the airplane? Again, a very recall level question. But the child should know this, right? List events of World War One. When did World War One start? Okay, then next, let's go to the next level now. Knows how. How about what I know, right? So the objective is compare properties of metals and non-metals. For that, I need to know what is conductivity. How does conduction take place in metals and non-metals? In non-metals, the conduction will not take place. So we have science teachers here who will agree with me, and I'm sure everybody knows that metals are good conductors, non-metals are bad conductors, and I need to know what is conductivity to say that okay, metals are good conductors because there are particles on which the heat or electricity can move. In plastics, that will not happen because these are non-metals. Okay. The next objective here we have is analyze the reaction of oxygen and metals. Oxygen reacts differently with different metals. Let's first see an example of what happens when oxygen interacts with iron. Now, interacting with iron is different from interacting with sodium, is different when interacting with copper. It is different. So I need to know how the oxygen is reacting. Then I can say, okay, fine. If oxygen is reacted in this manner, with iron it will behave in this way, with sodium it will behave in this way. Right? Are you all with me here? Okay. Once I know how, then a child should be able to demonstrate. A child should be able to show what he or she has learned and should be able to connect to the real world as well. Okay. So maybe the objective that I wanted to achieve is differentiate between simple and compound machines. And I want the child to justify that stapler is a compound machine. Why is stapler a compound machine? The child should know that what are simple machines. A child should know what are compound machines. Then a child should know that in a stapler, I have to press. So there is a wedge like this, which is a simple machine, and then I have to press like this for stapling. That is the lever. So there are two simple machines involved here, and that is why it is a compound machine. A child should know all this so a child can demonstrate. Correct? That is the next level. The child should be able to show the learning, apply the learning. Okay, one more example we have here. Examine the role of Germany in World War II. Right? Okay, so you will get a lot of World War questions and you'll get a lot of science questions because those two are my very science, of course, is my own subject, and World War is something that I really liked to study. Okay, summarize the economic condition of Germany pre and post World War II. Now, I wanted to examine the role of Germany. For that, I need to understand there was an economic depression after World War One and before World War Two. Then what happened? Then somebody got very powerful and started to control the people, and then it led from one thing to another, and it led to World War Two. All right. So that is where the child should be able to connect different events to the final event. Right. Um, the topmost category is does, where there is actual evaluation happening, actual creation of information, creation of a product or some is getting created. So evaluation of filtration systems. So evaluate filtration system is my objective. Right. Now filtration system works in a different way. So we have natural filtration system. We now have a lot of filters that we have at home. We have big filters in industry. Now as a child, I have to design, now that's the activity, design a low cost sustainable water purifier. So child will have to understand what are the materials available to me. I need a low cost. I can't import material, right? So I have to use materials available to me and create a low cost sustainable water purifier. My output is I need pure water. What all I can use so that I have pure water. So I need to know different types of, if I'm creating, maybe using different pebbles and soil, I need to understand what kind of pebbles I can use. I have to use smooth pebbles, or I have to use big pebbles. I need to understand the property of any material that I'm using to create this water purifier. Right. One more example is compose an article. I have to compose an article. It can be for newspaper or for research. My activity is develop questions to interview Miss Greta Thunberg. I have to create questions, and for that, I need to know who Greta Thunberg is. What is the outcome I want from that activity? I have to write a newspaper article. Now, to write that newspaper article, what are the questions I need to create so that this interview is worthwhile? Right? It should not be, okay, what do you do? How do you like? What is your favorite color? These are questions I cannot ask because then that interview will not be worthwhile. I need to be very specific on what led you to fight for the climate change. What happened? What inspired you to do this? Right? So these are the questions that will create an impact for that particular article. So this is a pyramid. Why we are spending time on this pyramid is you need to understand the different levels for assessing, and you need to then give weightage. That we'll be talking about in the blueprint section. You need to give weightage for each level. You can't have all does level question. You can't have all show level question. You can't have all no level question. But we need to know the different levels. We need to know different examples of it so that we understand about the bifurcation of the assessment design. Cindy, you want to add
Absolutely.
here?
Yes. So here's the thing, on this particular framework and a competency pyramid that we want to talk to you about is simply because our tendency is not to create a blueprint, right? We're so accustomed now to managing the end to end of creating a question paper. It's a prefixed blueprint. The When we talk about blueprints, it's not just about the assessment or the summative paper. We're talking about an entire plan. What we are writing on paper as an assessment design for the entire unit or for the entire year that we're planning it out. So it depends on where we're starting. But prior to that, there are two very important documents that get done in every school and in all that you do. One, you definitely have your yearly plan broken down further. That's one very important document, which we'll be constantly referring to. And two, there is also your vertical progression, right? You are deciding how much of time and importance you want to give to a topic in a given grade and its relevance going further. If it doesn't have a relevance going further, you determine you want to reduce the time you're spending on that learning. And this could be something as important and interrelated. So, for example, we talk about soil as a topic over here that's come up on the left. If you look at the second one from the bottom, classify different types of soil in Asia. And why is this important? Is it important from a perspective of agriculture going further? What kind of crops? What kind of rainfall for those kind of crops? So understanding soil, how it holds water, or what all the components is important even for further. So the time you're probably spending is more. So if time is more, weightage is more. What is the impact in terms of the learning is more? Do you want to build a further competency? So the time and the importance of it is a planning question, because we know not just about what we're teaching in our grade, but its relevance in a grade higher or at a much later stage. You may skip a grade, but it's still important later. Same example was for properties of metals and not metals and conductivity. It's important at multiple levels. So is the base strong? Has that understanding been like complete? Is my knowledge and my knowing how to use that knowledge complete? Can I come to how I can show or demonstrate what I have learned? And can I do something with that? So simple level competency build. And if you look on the extreme left, we've put an arrow going up. It says from novice to expert, right? And this novice to expert is how you build your learning competency levels, right? Perfect. For all the language teachers here, I'm guessing there are language teachers here, all right? So you're looking at composing an article as one of your doing activities over there. Your prerequisite for that is construct of sentences, use of syntax, choice of vocabulary and dimensions of vocabulary, perceived meanings that you will have within. So how do you write? How do you enrich? So the does part of it. So, and before that, everything else. So some are really, really hygiene elements which we need to bear in mind. And that central pyramid there, with the bottom line of knowledge, skills, and attitude, going from knows to does, is what we'll be referring to going ahead. Right? Great. Yes. So can't say enough about the importance of a vertical progression, and while we refer to it more as a vertical progression, the other half, which is the horizontal progression, is many a time, and I'm sure all of you all. I'm going to do a quick question here just to gauge what your understanding of horizontal progression is. Could you please type in the chat what you think the horizontal progression helps you to do? What does horizontal progression help you to do?
Yeah, we talk a lot about vertical progression for sure, Sindhu. Horizontal progression is just taken for granted.
Yes, agreed. So let's just do this quickly. Yes.
Yeah, and for those who are looking for how to register, registration link is here. You can attend this webinar and then you can register, or you can register in the break time that we are going to have in some time. Yeah. We don't want you to miss anything in this session. So you can register during the break time or once the session is over.
Yes. I'm still waiting for horizontal progression.
Yes, teachers, horizontal progression. Come on.
Okay. All right. Are we a little slow on the responses? I know it's an early morning for many in India, and I know it's a thing. Oh, okay. Gisela's did one more this thing come in? Perfect. Yes, Judy. Horizontal progression means the succeeding learnings of the students which refer to time. Okay, how would I simplify that? Okay, let's definitely. So it's you're talking about horizontal progression as in where I was in my learning at one point of time, and how far have I progressed in my learning now? Have I understood what you're trying to say accurately, Judy? Okay. Akrish, are you saying that you don't have too much clarity on the horizontal progression?
Horizontal
We're covering
progression.
that. We're covering that. Not to worry. Is a lab activity where everyone does the same procedure, but teacher can tell which group is doing the observations correctly. Okay, yes, that's an example of an activity that is going on, Bella. Very true. That is an activity that is going on. Okay, let's pause for a second and come outside our subjects for now. Okay, all of us in this space right now, we are teachers of grade 6 in a given school. All right, we're sitting together. This is the start of the year for us, and we're sitting and planning activities for the entire year. All right, all of us who are subject teachers have our vertical progression because we know. All right, so Rushali is with Bella and with Judy, for example, and I'm with Gisela and Akrish, for example. So right, so we're working together. These are our subjects. Great. Now somewhere the subjects need to talk to each other, right? So the science folks have to be in discussion with the social science folks, or the environmental science teachers, or with English teachers, or with mathematics teachers. What is that one thread that's going to hold all of this together? Horizontally, are we creating silos in the classroom? So you know how it happens. The bell rings, the English teacher enters the class. The bell rings again, the mathematics teacher enters the class. How cohesive, how wonderfully tied up is the learning for the child? Or is it separate silos? Quadratic equation happening in one, something else happening in the other. Yes, absolutely. It is that way, isn't it? I agree. So when we're doing this, we need to be integrated. Now, all of us, integration of the subjects, well said, Judy, perfectly well said. Integration of the subjects is where horizontal progression will come in. All right, subject integration, very good, Anvita, absolutely. Subject integration is important. So, how many of us, and this is like, I wish I could do a show of hands like it would be possible on Zoom, but I just want a Y or an N in response. How many of you individually are teachers who go by a textbook, lesson 1 to lesson 19? How many of us plan lesson 1 to lesson 19? Lesson 1 to lesson 10. How many of us go in order? Do I get a Y or an N? I just want to know whether we go in the sequence as the textbook is printed.
Yeah, so in my school, when I was in school, it was usually chapter 1, open your textbook, chapter 1, and then goes to chapter 13, 14, 15
Let's see
in
what
geography.
the
Yeah.
others are saying. Yes, teachers. Anvita says not me. Okay, so Anvita's not doing that in the order of. It's a no, I'm guessing, Anvita. All right. Oh, Bella also says not me. Okay, very interesting. So great. I'm happy. So this is fantastic. We're not going in the sequence. Lovely. So what we are then saying is we plan with each other in terms of subjects. So no project should be too much because there are 3 other projects going on for a subject, right? For multiple subjects. So there is one learner and there are multiple subjects and teachers around this one learner. How do we, in a horizontal progression, work together? So great. We are not going in sequence is the first achievement. So horizontal progression is perfect if that's the case. We go in a sequence where we align topics across math and science as much as we can. We're not saying that standalone topics will not happen, will happen. But that's worked into the annual plan in a very, very nice sequence, right? So we have our horizontal and vertical progressions. We have our annual plan. Brilliant. Okay. We have our unit plan, obviously. There's a calendar. And above all, finally, when we come to the lesson in question and we break it down, we have all our learning outcomes, big and small. and we have our student voice and student choice built into this. So this much we're going to cover as far as a blueprint is concerned. Yes. Perfect. Perfect. Yes, Akansha. Absolutely. You're also not doing it in sequence. And Anna says project integration. Very good. Yes. We have to
Correct.
have
So
integrated
now,
projects.
right. So now a lot of schools, most of the schools don't really follow chapter 1 to chapter 13 process because they understand the importance of horizontal progression. In fact, schools are now comfortable sharing that, this topic we should skip. And that's really commendable because that never happened in our school. We cannot skip even a
Agreed.
single page
Agreed. But
of a text.
parents are also that way now, right? So they do make an effort to understand it's okay to skip it. A publisher is not making this thing about it. So it's what works for the learning of the child, and I think that's a common objective everyone has. So it works very, very well. Right. So moving ahead and getting into the blueprint factors. Yes,
Okay,
Rushali, are we
just
moving into
so
the
there's a question that can you explain this progression, elaborate on both horizontal, vertical?
Okay, so Akansha, who's that? Akansha, right? The question is perfect.
Yes.
Akansha, the vertical progression. The vertical progression is Akansha. What subject do you teach? If you could just type that in the chat, I'll respond with um, something specific to what you do. Okay, let's. I can't see a response from Akansha, so I'm just going to take an example of. Shall we take science?
Yeah, we can take science.
Perfect. All right. So in science, let's take plants. All right.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the plant kingdom, and we're talking about all elements as far as the plant is concerned, and different flora across. Akansha teaches Hindi. Akansha, I'll give you an example in a minute. Since we've started science, I'll complete it. Okay. So we've got science here. Now in this, Rushali, give me a topic which is non-photosynthesis because that comes to mind very quickly.
Agriculture of plants,
Okay, so
products of
where
plants.
soil and light and everything play a combination, right? Here, if you're saying in the vertical progression, how important is this up to grade 9 or grade 10 if you're a grade 6 teacher? So where all is this topic going to come? Is what you're testing, and you're making sure that it appears in your vertical progression. You're seeing that this concept of agriculture with soil, light, and weather conditions is coming up maybe in grade 8 and in grade 9 and maybe not in grade 10. But if you know it's coming up, you pay due importance and time, and you spend time clearing that concept. So this is vertical progression. Where all does it appear going forward as a concept? Simple, right?
Then usually vertical progression is created with backward planning. So first we
Yes.
need to understand what is when a
End
child
outcome.
passes. So why I'm talking about grade 10, because in India we follow grade 10 is like boards and then they go to college. So in grade 10, what I want my students to be ready with? I have that list ready, and from that I do backward planning. That okay, based on this, what should a child learn in grade 9 and then grade 8, 7, 6, 5, and so on. Okay, so I cannot start. So maybe we write and we have an Hindi language. So we can't start with
We'll use
maybe
that for
dialogue
language
writing.
overall. Yeah, we'll use language overall. No? Go backward
Yeah,
from
yeah,
there. Yeah.
yes, Sindhu, please go ahead.
Yeah. So Akansha, language as an overall concept, all right? What is your end outcome that you would want? Apart from the LSRW skills that you want to develop, end outcome is also a high level of communication. So starting from as basic as you want to be able to write an email and you want it to be drafted well, if you want to have, what is the communication you want, what is the underlying tone that you want in that communication, this is an important part of writing that email. Should it be polite, strong? Is it seeking help? Is it a legal mail? What is that student in the outside world is going to do? So starting from there, the kind of words I use is important, right? So where do you fit that in? Do we fit that in everywhere at the learning? On so for example, I'll use this in English. Okay, in English, writing email also as crisp as it can be and as well communicated as it can be is what you end up saying is a great letter writing or a great email writing activity. However, in that, things have reduced. So it's what is redundant now. You don't end up writing those formal letters which have the to address and the form address and too many of the yours sincerely activity, right? Same thing with you. Where does that appear now? Grade 10, what do I need? Do I need to write a formal letter, informal letter? Do I need to write a creative, do I need to write a narrative essay? Do I need to write an argumentative essay? Okay, what am I writing there? For that, what are the sentences or sentence structures I need to know? If I'm going to disagree with someone, how do I start that statement? How do I follow that statement? These are elements that you're building into a essay at grade 10. How do those components appear in 9, in 8, in 6, and so on? So this is vertical progression for you, how it fits into this structure such that you're able to write that narrative essay or that argumentative essay or that letter extremely well. So choice of words, sentences, and syntax structures will make a contribution to that final essay. So none of that can be left out. We can't jump straight to that. Horizontal is, again, let's take an example, and you're teaching, and this is, I think, probably my favorite example. You're teaching water. All right. Water is probably a topic right now. Maths could be volume, as an example. Science could be lakes and water bodies and oceans. Poetry about, a river. So all of this is the spectrum when it comes to, if you're going to be doing water, what all components of water. And as a civic sense, obviously why you should take care of your lakes and your water bodies, and how you should be cognizant of that as your future. So all of that is the important element. Hopefully, yes, Akansha. Yes, Akansha, thank you very much. Yes, and we shall quickly move on once we sorted this. Yeah.
So we'll just take one example here. Okay, we start with what we
Science.
are showing you. Yeah, we are using science as an example. So what we are showing here is an annual plan. It's a breakup where what we are going to do in term 1, what we are going to do in term 2. Again, this example is used where the term starts from June. There are some countries where term starts from April. This is just an example that we are using here, that we are going to cover. In June we have food and motion. July we have light shadows and getting to know about plants, separation of substances, and so on. So this is a sample of annual and monthly plan, right? Let's go deeper into term 1, where this is the activity. And in term 1, we can have, from all these topics, we can do so many assessments, right? If you can read here, I can do a project where I can ask students to, have a plant. I grow a plant, and then what happens if you don't give water? What happens when you don't give sunlight? What happens when the soil is not proper? So it can be a proper project where you get to know about plants. That's the topic, right? Getting to know about plants. That's this entire chapter can be project. Then we can have topic of light, shadow, and reflection, where we can have activities and real life connect. Students can actually observe. They can do observation, and then they can do inference. How the shadow is formed, or how is reflection formed? What happens when light falls on your face? What happens when light falls from behind? Right, the shadow is formed. If the light is far, my shadow will be small, and so on. So these are all real life connect that the child can do. The child can observe, they can do inference, and this can be a complete assessment for a teacher, right? The next topic is motion and measurement. They can do projects like create a parachute. They can have a matchbox and a balloon and maybe create a parachute out of it, or maybe a cloth, create a parachute. Or alleviating train, if you have done a project where you take a CD, you attach a balloon to it and then a straw. So when you blow the straw, there is air in balloon, and then it levitate. The CD is flying above the ground and then it moves. It's a project that a child will do and learn the form of different motions. Along with that, they're also learning momentum. They're also learning air, the concept of air. They're learning so many things while they're doing that project. We can take class quiz for all the topics and maybe create a gamified experience where the team is defined for the entire term. There will be class quiz every time, and it's a tournament. In the end of the term, whichever group has the maximum points wins.
Who doesn't like winning?
I know. And it's the best part because they feel really belong, right? This is my group, okay? My group is
Absolutely.
at this score right now.
Absolutely. And okay, so Gisela's mentioned two things, which and both are like absolutely complementary here. It fits in very well. Learning by doing is the principle that you're focusing on. Yes, that's why you do science, and that's how science becomes realistic and involving students and they learn. So the effort is in the planning. The effort is completely in the planning. So you've got a term, and this is exactly what you would have done sitting down in that group of yours, science teachers sitting and figuring out what kind of projects or what kind of assessments you'd want to do based on the learning outcomes that you've already designed. So this is literally that scribble that you do on a piece of paper saying, okay, let's plan it this way. Or, you're typing it and saying, in short, let's plan it this way. And that's all we've done. You've got your yearly plan. We've broken it up into the entire, the whole term that we've broken it up and said, okay, let's do this. Brilliant. One question, and for all teachers here, this list over here, does it seem very heavy? Does it seem like a lot to do in one term as assessment? Please help with input on that. Thank you.
Yeah, I can think of actually while reading, I can think of more and more activities that we can do
Hold
for
on.
separation of
Let's hear, yeah.
substances. Yeah.
Let's hear what they're saying. Is it too much? Is it too many tests, too many activities is what we'd like to hear from you. Judy says learning by actual application in real life situations. Absolutely.
And involve students as they learn and they learn. Yeah.
Yep. Is it too much? The topics are indeed heavy. Okay. All right. That's what I'm seeing now. And no, actually, no, Akansha, it is quite readable. It's quite clear. I'm wondering why it's not readable for you. Okay. Okay. So if Bella, you say the topics are really, really heavy. Okay, hold on. And Judy says for her, it's not heavy. Okay, hold on. So yes, exactly the point, right? It's a perspective. Now, this perspective could come from two things. You know your students best, right? And this perspective is coming from there. For my students, perhaps in the environment that I'm in, this seems a little heavy. Okay. And for Judy says, my students, it's not very heavy. In the school that I'm in, it makes more sense and can do. Okay. The topic will involve at least 2 weeks for 3 periods per week to cover. Completely agree with you. And I love the specifics that you're coming to, Bella. Now here, we've got 4 months, right? So June, July, August, September. Let's assume that we have 2 weeks for 3 periods per week, right? Rushali, the math, I'm leaving it to you to figure out how many, 45-minute or 15-minute periods you have in order to close this. Bella, the point is, how can you make it reasonably enough to have excitement? There is fun in learning. There is a full project that you can do for the same, and you reduce the number of absolute specific handwritten or otherwise tests of MCQs. How do I reduce that? So you have those in the initial stages and you start moving on. So how can I mix the two is the question. Separation of subjects will involve lab activities, will take up to 3 periods for 2 weeks. Perfect. And that's exactly the fun, right? Because you're doing it that way. As a result of which, what are you assessing then? What are you assessing there is the question, right?
And see, lab activity will be an activity. I'm so sorry. Lab activity is an activity that the child will do. But what is the assessment part there? What will you assess? You will assess their observation, the way they are doing the activity, the way they are coming to conclusion, the way they are following your instruction, the steps. What will be your assessment part during that activity is the assessment design that we're going to talk about here.
Perfect.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Perfect. Yeah, so this exactly is right. So if you have the same kind of assessment for all the topics across the months, that's what's going to be the absolute killer and boredom towards assessment. So in this, all we're saying is, please, when you're planning, plan your mix with, of course, keeping in mind your students, the kind of time that you have to devote to this, your infrastructure that enables it, and choose a lovely mix of assessments such that the students are not expecting the similar or the same kind of an assessment to come their way. All right. So yes, Bella, that's excitement. So I love the fact that the activities will take that time, but if you can just build an observation sheet, and if it is a peer observation also at that time, they'll observe each other and say and give feedback to each other as well. And you will have the task of making sure everyone's learning is up to speed and is on the same level, right? Looking forward to that. Oh, lovely, lovely. I love your input, Bella. Well said. Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. So then you've already made your change. You've already taken light, shadow, and reflection above, and you've taken motion and measurement of distance down. Fabulous. That's what makes this, that's what brings educators together, no? So we're so thrilled to just have this little bit of an activity making such a contribution. Yes, Rushali, over to
Absolutely.
you.
And that is why the importance of planning and importance of designing. You should be aware of what you're going to do throughout the year in terms of the activities, of course, and in terms of the assessment mapped to the activity. Because if we just keep on doing activity after activity, it'll not lead us anywhere, because we don't even know whether the child has learned. We don't even know whether the outcome has been achieved, and whether whatever planning we did, we worked so hard, is it really successful in implementation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, Judy. Yes, variations in terms
Variations.
of activities and where to improve. So this whole uniqueness you will build in ensures that you've got inclusive activities because you know your students. You're making sure they're completely on the inclusive level, that you've taken every child into consideration, and the fact that it's fair for everyone. See, after all, it should be equitable, right? Everyone gets a chance to show how they've got their learning outcome. Perfect. Yes, Sharon, we'll definitely be coming to scaffolding. Very true. Yes, in a little bit.
So this is just a template I'm showing you. We'll be working on a sheet together. All right. So this is a template that we're working on for blueprint. Theme name. What is the learning outcome? What is the overall learning outcome for that particular theme? What is the total marks that we are looking at? And which exams are we talking about? Are we talking about uh, formative assessment? Are we talking about the year-end assessment? How are we going to define the
Got
assessments
it.
exam here? What are the chapters involved here? Chapter titles. What is the weightage per chapter? Now, Sindhu had shared earlier that based on the vertical progression, based on the horizontal progression, we identify the weightage on that particular topic. Now, there can be topics which have weightage of, say, 20% out of. So if it's a 100 marks paper, let's, for simplicity, if it's a 100-mark paper and I have a chapter now on Newton's law, that chapter will have 25% weightage if I have 5 chapters. Okay, if I have a chapter on, say, pollution and different types of pollution, I may give it weightage of 10%, because this I'm going to cover every year, and the same thing is going to be covered: air pollution, water pollution, soil pollution, so on. If I have something on, say, electricity, and how the current flows through it, maybe that part, that I can give weightage not like Newton's law 25%, but more than pollution, so I can give 15%. So this weightage percent becomes very critical, because that will help you to emphasize on the assessments you need to take for that particular chapter. Okay, and then we have added the knows how, shows and does. That is from the competency pyramid that we showed. Okay. Next.
Perfect. Just a quick question. Is there anything else that you normally use when you're creating your blueprints? Is also a fair question for us to ask you, because we all continuously learning from each other. So is there anything that you think should come apart from what's mentioned already?
Yes, what I'll do is I'll move in the sheet so that if there is anything, I can add it
They
in
can,
the
of
sheet
course, type there.
directly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect.
I'll increase the size here. Okay.
Yep, you will need to. Yep. It's still a little small. We're gonna. I mean, at least for people with gray hair, it's really seriously needs a little bit of help there. But yes.
Okay, let me. Is it better now?
Yes. Yes.
Then I can't increase more than this, because then it'll go out of the slide.
No. It's perfect. It's perfect.
Okay. So this is a sheet where, like we spoke about, the theme name, the learning outcome, the total marks. Say it's for simplicity, we'll just write total marks as 100, so that we can calculate the weightage percentage, and based on that, weighted marks. Maybe we're talking about, say, term and exam, right? In the meanwhile, while I'm filling this sheet, what you can do is you can put it in the chat about what all you use to create a blueprint, and if at all we can make this blueprint better, it's of course more than welcome. Okay, we are more than happy to modify this sheet that it becomes suitable for all of us. Okay. Okay. So maybe chapter number one. We have first chapter. Let's use the same example that we saw here of the annual plan. Just hold on a second. Okay. Food, where does it come from, and motion of measurement of distances. Okay. Maybe this is chapter 3. What is it? Motion and measurements, right? And I'll just write 2 more chapters so that we can move faster. Light, shadows, and reflection. And getting to know plants. Okay, now these are the 4 chapters that we are talking about. Now weightage percentage. Now food, where does it come from? It's talking about agriculture, it is talking about plants, and it is not. So again, I'm talking from the context of Indian syllabus. Okay, you might have it in a different way, but this is just for example purpose that we are taking here. It may or may not be true in the way it works in your country. Okay, so just take it as an example, and then you can modify based on your classroom, your school, the way you work. All right, just a disclaimer here. Okay, so food, where does it come from? Suppose this chapter is not important every year. So every year this chapter may not be done, and every year there's something else that we are doing for this particular topic. So I may give it a weightage of only 10%. So only 10 marks from this particular chapter.
There's
Okay.
already a question, Rishali. So Bella's
Okay.
already asked this question on weighted percentage based on whether it's based on weeks of teaching in terms of time or in terms of importance in the whole. So I think reference to that
It
would be
is,
great.
yeah, so it is both, Bella, that the weighted percentage is more of, see, if the topic is extremely important and if it takes, if you need to assess and you need to do multiple activities and go at a deeper conceptual level for that particular topic, it will take more time to cover. Okay, so the importance of topic, the its weightage, and the more time it takes. So it goes hand in hand, if that answers your question. Now, motion and measurements. Motion measurements will have a lot of activities. We are thinking of a project also for this particular topic, and this topic is longer as well. So I will give weightage of say 20%. So the marks is 20. Here it's coming the same. Here it is coming the same because we have taken 100 marks paper. Okay, it may not be the same if you give a 50 marks paper. Okay, this is for simplicity. We are using a 100 marks paper. So we have to see that here the total becomes light, shadows, and reflection. Very important topic. Uh, Again, very important topic in terms of the learning outcome that this has, the kind of activities that it has, the time that you're going to spend on this topic. And light, shadows, reflection comes every year for a child to understand, and every year there's a concept added to it. Okay, in light, shadows, and reflection, I might be doing in grade 3. I learn about how the light how the light travels, and maybe how I can create shadows using different shapes. In the later grade, I might learn about how I can add a lens in between and how the light will pass through it through a lens. Then I might learn about different types of lens. So every year this information is important for me. I'm learning this, and uh, it is becoming difficult and difficult. The vertical progression is in that way. So this weightage maybe is 30%. Getting to know about plants, I'm giving it 20%, and I will have to add one more topic so that this becomes 20. So I'll just add one more topic from here: separation of substances. Chemistry topic here. I give 20% weightage. Now, since we have this weightage, I know that these are the marks that I need to I need to create assessment from this chapter. Okay. Now, these are the four levels. These are the four levels on competency pyramid. So I'll just show the competency pyramid again as a reference. Just hold on a second. So knows becomes the basic level where it's a recall category and where it is more of whatever you read, you can answer, you can look and answer. Knows how is to learn and start implementing it. Show is the demonstration part, and does is where the child is actually doing the project while the child is actually applying multiple concepts that the child has learned and applying it together. Right? So we go on the slide, sorry, the sheet. Now the category of question from this chapter will depend on the way you want to create the blueprint. So for example, food, where does it come from? From this chapter, you want to do a demonstration kind of a question, a show kind of a question. Yes, it depends on importance of topics. Yes, Judy, right. So in shows, food does where it come from, you want to show. So the child should be able to demonstrate from where the food is coming, from where, what is the journey or the food takes before it reaches your plate. Right? So there is a journey that you want the child to work on. So you might write, what is the journey? Or I'll just write the marks 1 second. So you might want to add a 5 mark question from shows from this particular chapter, and maybe you want to give a 5 mark question from the nose category.
Yeah.
Okay, you don't want a higher order does experiment
For
creation project from
everything.
this chapter.
Right.
But you want a creation project from maybe a chapter on light, shadows, and reflection. That can be a 10 mark
Right.
thing. Okay,
So
that will
here's
be assessment based.
Gisela has a point. She's mentioned thematic teaching and she's mentioned merging of disciplines. Yes, since we're only doing the science subject right now, in this there isn't an example necessarily of the merging of the disciplines, but we will come to that in the other in the next one. So we just use thematic teaching and merging of disciplines and make a note.
Right. Yeah, or just, yeah, thanks for pointing that out. So we can also do is, maybe if we are doing a project here in this chapter, we are doing a project in the does, we can add one more column where we'll talk about the integration. And we can write this can be integrated with maybe geography, and how, of course, we'll have to write the detail in the planning. This is the assessment design that we are doing here.
Right.
In the planning stage, we'll see how this project is mapped to geography, and how that will work in the classroom is something will be done in the planning part. If this helps. Sindhu, what do you think?
Absolutely. So and it can be so depending upon the complexity that the children can handle, food where it comes from can also be roadways transport and how with the movement and therefore the cost of the goods, right? So this whole profit and loss gets covered with the food journey as well. So mathematics integration is perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. And that can be part in the nose question also, or in the shows question also.
The
Right?
knows
In the
how
shows,
does it reach the table, how does it reach the table, what is the journey? Yes, absolutely.
right? So this is how I'm not going to finish this. It'll take a lot of time, but this is how we work on the assessment design, where every chapter there is a proper weightage given based on the importance of that chapter, the time you're going to spend on that chapter, and based on that time and the weightage, your assessments will be designed in that way. What is the level of assessment? See, in nose, you might want to add nose in all. 5 marks each. This is the nose you want to add from all. Okay, but about the know how, knows how, shows, does, you can't have for all the chapters, because then it becomes very cumbersome for you to plan and execute.
And
It
for the
becomes
child.
very cumbersome for the child. The child will be just drowned in assessments and projects in all subjects. Imagine this is just science, right? In all subjects, if the child is drowned, then the child is not really engaged or interested in learning. The child is just doing it because he or she has to do. Right? So
So
this is
yes.
what is important to plan out, knowing what chapter. So suppose here this we have getting to know plants. We do a show, so there's a demonstration where the child is actually coming and explaining the factors that are affecting the growth of plant. So there's a demonstration, and the demonstration is a group project that I can give 5 marks to. Separation of substance, knows how. I need to know how I separate substances. So this will carry a lot of activities of knows how, and this can also carry the activity for does. So my 20 marks are done. I don't have a does, sorry, shows. I don't have a does here. Does I have only in the light, shadows, and reflection, and maybe in motion and measurement I can give weightage of 10 marks.
Could be considered. Yeah, could be considered.
Yeah. So
Again,
like I said,
it's a
I'm giving
design.
a very I'm giving a very random design here. I'm giving round numbers. You can also have 2 marks, 3 marks, 1 mark, 4 marks. This is just for the simplicity of calculation purposes that I'm using round figures of 5 and 10 and 30 and 20. But it is important to know that not all chapters will have all levels of question assessment. Questions, of course, can be from all levels, but the assessment may not be from all levels.
Absolutely. And
Okay, so
coming
if I'm
to
taking a quiz, sorry.
yeah, go ahead, go
Yeah,
ahead, go ahead.
please. So
Please.
if I'm taking a quiz, I will have questions from all the levels. Okay, if I'm taking a project, but that project will be not for all the chapters in a term. Okay, yes, Sindhu, you were saying.
Right. So what I was simply pointing out is this is a framework that you're doing at the start of the year. Also, because when you're sitting down to do the allocation, all this is interlinked, right? You're sitting with your unit plan. You're sitting with you're sitting with your yearly plan, your unit plan. You're sitting with a number of lectures you actually have, and you're assigning a weightage, and you're saying, okay, this is what is important to be covered as a learning objective and a related assessment for the same. So there's a learning objective and a related assessment for the same. All of this is so interlinked that it's important to do a good amount of this planning at the start of the year. While you may sit and do the actual nitty-gritties of the assessment or creating the rubric for the interdisciplinary light, shadows, and reflection with geography, you may do that a little later. The assessment design is critical. It shows you multiple things. It shows you where in the time of the year you have a project running for that class in the subjects that you're catering to. And if, like what Gisela was saying, if there is a merging of disciplines and it's a thematic learning, then you know that there is no overlap. It can't be 3 or 4 things happening at the same time for the learner. So teachers and schools being well planned is the only solution to that activity, right? We have to be well planned. So where in the scheme of things do projects come? Is there an overlap? Is it closer to exams? Are there holidays around the corner? All of this is our task to do. And that's why the assessment design and the planning is crucial at the start of the year. All right. So, which is why it's a great time right now. So, we'll be like at the end of December. So, by the time you're sitting for your planning in the next quarter, all of it is sorted. Yes, Vishali.
Right. So we come back.
Come back to the slide. Yeah.
Okay. So
We'll
I
share
think
this. Yeah. We'll take a
at
break.
this
Yeah. At this stage. Yeah.
stage, I know it's a lot of information overload and a lot of thinking happening, a lot of reflection happening in the practices that already is going on in your school and how we can modify. We'll take a 15-minute break.
It's 9.
Roy, yeah,
Yeah.
Roy, do you
It's
want to share the?
Hi, Vishali. Hi, Sindhu. This is a great first half of our session today. Very interesting and quite detailed. We also appreciate all the feedback from our audience. We have other guests from other countries also joining us, also Philippines. We have some Malaysia, some people from Malaysia as well, and India. Thank you so much for joining us. That's right. Let's take a quick break. Stretch our legs, get a little bit of something to eat, and we'll come back after 15 minutes. So see you all approximately around 12:25 PH time or 15 minutes from now. All right. So we'll see you in 15 minutes. Thank you, everybody. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. We're back, and really exciting session. Very interesting. We're seeing how we really break down the need for very clear assessments and how to plan it ahead of time. I think the learnings I've been getting from the session today is, you have to plan ahead, and I think it was good to have been mentioned that, if we do this ahead of time at the beginning of the school year, before the start of the semester, it's much easier to determine which assessments you will need and how you will put the appropriate weights given the activities. All right. So without further ado, I'd like to call in our speakers. I'd like to bring back Vishali and Sindhu onto the stage. Vishali, Sindhu, I hope you had a good stretch, a pretty nice break. Just try to re-energize and move around our seats once in a while. Sometimes I try to see if I can have a raised. That's one of my resolutions. Try to have a raised
Yes.
table, so
Yeah.
that then you can do these video sessions and at least you're standing up. I think
Standing up.
it's having good posture is really important.
Yes. I think
Yeah,
I'll add that to
absolutely.
my list. Thanks, Roy.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'll give the floor to you. Please
Thank
continue.
you so much. Yes, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
I'll share my screen. Let me know when the screen is visible. Yeah.
And it's come
We are
back.
back
Yes.
from the break. And just a quick recap of what we did. We understood the Bloom's tax. We revised on the Bloom's taxonomy. We understood the types of assessments that we take: assessment as learning, off learning, for learning. We have off learning, which are standardized tests. The other two are formative in nature, and it is taken during the entire teaching learning process that happens. Right. We also realized that we also worked on a competency pyramid where it is important to have different categories of assessments for the students, and it has to be planned early in a year, and it has to be planned in a way that it is not a burden and it is inclusive in nature. So all this that we're talking about, it is not a burden. It has to be inclusive in nature. It has to have learning out. It should be mapped to learning outcome, and so on. This is what we are going to talk in this section now. In this section are the principles of assessment design. So we are going to talk about 7 principles of assessment design, and the first slide will give us the 3 main principles of assessment design. The first and the foremost and the most important is assessment tests are assessment tests the intended learning outcome. Okay, so if you see in the pyramid, when we showed about pyramid, we spoke about the objective and the corresponding question that works, right? Or the objective and the activity that the child has to do. So the activity is mapped to the objective. All the assessments that we do have to be mapped to the objective for that particular chapter, that particular concept, and that particular overall theme. If we take assessments which doesn't have an objective, that assessment will have no sense even for students. So what did I assess is a question we always ask, right? What did we assess from this activity? So this is very important. It has to be mapped to learning outcomes. The second is information. The information has to be explicit, accessible, and transparent. What we mean by that is the information that the child has should be very clear. The child should be aware of what is the outcome, or maybe what the child is assessed on. Maybe the rubrics needs to be shared with the child in advance. The flow of what is the process the child will have to follow has to be shared in advance. The overall information about these are the various in a project, these are the various milestones, this is the activity that you have to do, these are the steps that you will have to follow. All this has to be the what is the last outcome that we are, is it a presentation, is it a chart, is it is it a plan that the child will create? Is it a product that the child will create? The all the information has to be very transparent, explicit, and accessible. All right. The third principle is inclusivity. Assessment should be inclusive and equitable. It should give Every child in the classroom should have equal role to play in the activity, right? And it has to be equitable. Doesn't mean that, there's one child who gets to answer all the question and other students are just writing. Doesn't work. So it has to be inclusive and it has to be equitable. It has to be as per the requirement by the child. There'll be some children who will need more hand holding. There'll be some children who will need less hand holding. So how can a teacher cater to this differential instruction mode in the classroom? How can we have an element where there's somebody who knows and there's somebody who needs help? Peer support can be created. A peer support group. When you create group, you can make sure that in a group we have somebody who works really fast, who learns really fast, and there's some child who needs more help, and how child A can help child B to reach at a certain level, right? So the assessments, the projects, the way it is done has to be very inclusive. That's my checklist point number 3. uh Next, these for the fourth principle is learning enhancing assessment. There has to be assessment where there is learning happening. Okay, we don't want an assessment as a tick mark. If you remember the slide where I showed you the then and now of assessment, the then part, what we used to do earlier or in olden times, where assessment was just there for the tick mark that yes, there has been assessment happened in the class. Now the assessment have to be more of enhancing, that how the child, after doing an activity or after doing this assessment observation, the child is learning and the learning is going from one level to another. Okay, so while I'm explaining you all this, you can also reflect on what you think. How does this work in your assessment, in your school, in your class? You can put it in the chat. Okay, I hope you're back from your break, and I hope you're here listening to us and engage with us. So yes, learning enhancement. The next point is very important as far as teachers are concerned and even students are concerned, right? It has to be manageable amount of assessment. I can't have projects for every subject every day. I can't work on a project. I can't have activity. Like imagine we have 8 periods in a day and in all the periods there is quiz. Imagine, for a child. Now every so in a week we have 3 periods, and in all the 3 periods I take project work. Is it practical for a teacher to conduct the project, to create that information, to create rubrics for every day, to create a plan, to create resource bank, to create question bank every day? It's not practical, right? So the assessment design should be planned in a way, the sheet that I showed you should be planned in a way that it is manageable amount of work. It is manageable by the students as well as for the teachers. There has to be a element of formative and summative assessment. So we all have a year-end assessment and term-end assessment, but even in a project or even in an activity that you're doing, there has to be a culmination to it, right? So if it's a project that we're talking about, the project is at the end they will be presenting something that becomes a summative for that particular project, right? For formative, every longer duration activity needs to have specific milestones, and that milestones, how to check whether you have achieved or not, will be the formative assessment. Okay, so if you're doing a research project, it's a long research project, the child has to go through multiple resources and in the end produce a research article. Now there'll be different milestones in that research article. The child will be able to first, does it identify the problem statement for the research article? Did the child find the right resources as a reference? Did the child create a particular template for that research work? Did the child survey so many people? Are the survey questions correct? I'm just telling you some examples of maybe a steps for research work. So all these milestones become the point of formative assessment. Now some can be self-assessment, some can be assessment by the teacher. So it can be a quiz, it can be asking, it can be just talking together, having a discussion and understanding does it work or not. Okay, and then there'll be rubrics to check whether you have achieved that particular parameter or not. So we have response asked 3 quizzes to a maximum at least 2 would be practicable. Yes, of course. So you can choose. You can choose which activity you want to prioritize and which you want to do it, maybe not now, maybe later. Yes, activity should lead to final output. That is authentic assessment. Absolutely. If we don't have the final output, if it is not mapped to the objective, then that activity is just for being there.
Yep.
Just I want to create an engagement in the classroom. Let's do an activity.
And I love what Sharon has said otherwise also. So
Yeah.
collaborative projects ease the burden for checking for teachers as well. And I stand with you on that, okay, is the fact that, see, but at the end of the day, you know what we've done as teachers, then we've planned it well in advance such that it became a collaborative activity. We created a wonderful, cohesive, integrated learning environment for our children because they see then learning as a whole and not as subjects. They had a brilliant experience doing that, and then we have, some relief of it cluttering together. Students enjoy it, and I think outcome is achieved, so it's a win-win for everyone concerned. Very nicely put.
Right. Now there's a
Is it
question here,
possible?
interesting question. Is it possible to incorporate gamification in this assessment design? Absolutely. Absolutely. We can have assessment design. So for example, if it's a like a research work that we're talking about, right? There are various milestones. For every milestone you complete, you get a badge. And that child will showcase a badge maybe in the book or maybe in a paper or maybe on a proper sticker you get as a badge. And then if you have so many badges of different levels, then this is the final certificate that you get of completion, right? Or maybe like we were discussing about quiz. So there can be, so a classroom is divided into 4 teams for an entire term.
Yeah.
Okay, and every chapter we take a mapped quiz or maybe a project or whatever assessment is done, that group gets some points. So of course, individual gets points and marks, and group gets points. And then in the end, you can have the ranking of the groups going on, and then they get a reward. And those who are at the top get some stars, and then the other groups who are still working and still getting there get some, maybe some extra reading material. Maybe they get an activity that they can prove that yes, this is what they have learned. So gamification is completely possible. It's the way we create a mechanism of the assessment design, right? um yes, so yes, there are new learnings. And the last point, so this is the last and the foremost important point here, is feedback. Of course, I say important in all points because there are 7 principles and those are important. Feedback becomes important because this promotes and facilitates improvement. So, as a teacher, the kind of feedback we give is very, very important, right? If I say, oh, this is good work, okay, good feedback. If I say this is bad work, why is this bad work? Is what we have to give feedback. So, when we give feedback, always remember that is this is good, this is bad is not helpful. So, we have to give helpful feedback, which means we have to give feedback that leads to an action plan. Okay, so if we give feedback that this presentation is not good, this presentation, the text is too small, as a feedback you can give the text should be bigger, or maybe the images used should be clearer, or maybe the reference used should be more trustworthy. This is the feedback that helps. PPT not good is not a feedback. It's not going to help anybody. Acha, bad, oh god, okay, how is this bad, what will I do? Not helpful. But giving correct feedback, saying that the image can be better, which means that image is very blur, use a better image. That is a feedback. That's a concrete feedback. I know my action plan that I need to use images that are better. So feedback has to be very, very specific, which promotes learning. And of course, learning is important and it also facilitates improvement. Okay, so all of us needs to work on very, very specific feedback and need to work on good feedback, right? So yes, these are all principles. So just going back again, uh, 7 principles of assessment design. First is map to the learning outcome. Second is information has to be explicit, accessible, and transparent. Third is assessment should be inclusive and equitable. Fourth is learning enhancing assessment. Fifth is manageable amount of assessment for all. When I say all, it includes teachers, students, school, right? Sixth principle is formative and summative assessment should be part of your assessment design, and timely feedback that promotes learning and facilitates improvement. Yes, thank you so much. Yes, we all agree to these principles. So these principle becomes a ready reckoner or a checklist for us when we are creating an assessment design.
Absolutely.
We'll be looking at some examples, but before that, for assessment design, we also need to know the kind of examples we can take as an assessment, right? So we were already discussing about class quiz. We can take oral presentations. So a child does research work, and after the research work is done, the child will have to present in front of the classroom, or in front of the school, or in front of a district of their on their learnings. Or there can be elocutions. It can be a group presentation, it can be a research paper, there can be a role play or a drama. Self evaluation, digital portfolio are all examples of assessment, right? And there are many more, so I'm not limiting our thought process only to these seven. I have many more. We can have 3-2-1 format, we can have focus listing, we can have muddiest point. Now this activity is a technique where students identify a challenging or a confusing concept. Okay, and then they work on that particular concept because that's a difficult concept and everybody works on that concept together. 1 minute paper, think, pair, share, quiz show, memory matrix, jigsaw, concept mapping, journal writing, composition, online assessments. And if I start talking about online assessment tools, then we need another 3 hours to talk about it. Right? There are so many tools that helps you in taking assessments online. There are tools where you can create your worksheets. There are tools, the first tool that we used for the driving test, the chronology one, is also a kind of assessment that checks your understanding, that checks whether you, of course there is some level of recall, and also there's some level of application happening where you are okay, fine, first this step analyzing is analyzing, you're analyzing the answers and ordering it in a particular order, chronology. That is the kind of assessments that we can take. That was one of the tool that we used. Mentimeter is used a lot for polls, word cloud that we created. So all these tools that help you in the kind of assessments that you want to take in the classroom, and you map it and plug it to your assessment design, remembering the assessment principles. So we have three things here. We have first the blueprint template that we saw. Okay, when we have that template, we need to keep in mind the 7 principles. The 7 principles are: it should be objective mapped, it should not be a burden, it should be
Yep.
inclusive, the kind of information that you have to create,
Feedback.
feedback is there, right? And there has
Of
to be
course,
learning,
outcome.
the learning, yeah. So we have to map the, you have to put the checklist on one end, you have the blueprint ready, and now you have to plug in the activities. These are the examples of that. Okay,
Perfect.
these are all examples of assessments. So what we are going to do now is we are actually going to do an example. Okay, we have told a lot of theory and now we are going to actually implement. We did a unit plan, we saw an annual plan, unit plan, an assessment design plan for that particular term. Now let's create an assessment design for a project. Now that project can be a 3-month project or a 2-month project, like is seen on the screen. This is for grade 6 to 9. The project that we are taking is helping local businesses increase environmental sustainability. This is the project topic. Now imagine the integration here.
Yes.
The
Here's
integration
big
here,
time.
yes, Sindhu, please go ahead.
And this is big time integration. So And please feel free to think of this as 6 to 12 also, depending on your stage. We've chosen a fairly beautiful, sustainable topic because it's ultimately of interest to all our learners as well. It's the world that they are creating in which they have to live in, right? And local is important. Local is precious. So let's look at this from our local areas. Now, what's the content area that we're going to cover? We're going to understand local businesses and how they will be enabled with respect to environmental sustainability. One example that we've taken here, we've taken up how waste can be reduced. Okay, and this is simply for discussion and for focus that we've kept it there. Right. All of us, as in all of us probably here, have almost similar landscapes. So I'll talk about farming as a simple activity system right now. Not simple, actually, highly complex and highly competitive, but yes, we'll take that as a concept. When there's farming happening, after the initial phase of the plantation is done and the harvest is done, is there wastage on the farm? Question one. This is just a preliminary for before we even get there. Is there that's one question. Is there wastage on the farm? Yes, no, maybe. After which, of course, we move into the more important element, saying this produce moves. It moves either for processing, it moves as is long distance, it moves into a granary for storage. At these stages, can there be wastage? Or will there be wastage? Great. It's reached a granary, it's reached a store, it's traveled, it's gone for processing. From those locations, it either moves, like we said, to a store, it moves to a home, it moves to a hotel, it moves to wherever that product is going to be used in its form that the processing happened, raw or processed. In homes and in hotels, in both places, we know that there is wastage. Even if it's a vegetable, there is wastage. Even if there is a leftover food, it's wastage. So there's wastage. What does all this waste do if untreated is one of the things that we can do with children as far as the project is concerned. So what are we saying? Reduce impact on the natural environment and on people's health to a level that humanity can handle. All right. So we're not saying the kids are there to solve everything. Great. This is just a start point. Brilliant. We have a Padlet now. So Roshali is probably going to say that, this is where, so we'll walk you through the steps that we've thought of. And we listen to your, your inputs on what else we can do there. And this is what we've done in terms of how it looks. So what is the learning outcome that we would want to achieve over here? This will depend on each of our subjects, right? What is the learning outcome that we would want to do? Do we want them to know how to conduct a survey? Do we want them to know how to conduct interviews? Do we want them to be problem solvers? So what is that learning outcome that we definitely want? And here I'm taking it very simple, the learning and ways to reduce waste. Okay, it could be very simple. I'm just saying one learning outcome is children have to identify ways of reducing wastage. Perfect. One single learning outcome. That's it. Just for simplicity so that we can have this conversation. What are the milestones in this project? Do children know about all of these things? Maybe, maybe not. Yes, Bella, definitely we can do helping local businesses to helping local communities. Of course, at any point of time, you're most welcome to. And thank you for that. That's extremely helpful. Great. So we've said this. What are the sequence that we want our children to do? Again, in a classroom or in a school, what was the objective? We want them to go out and learn how to use a survey tool. They create questions, speak to people, right? So survey and interviews is the first level sequence of this project. After which, identification, or when they analyze the interviews and they analyze the survey, what are they coming to? They're classifying the information. Perfect. If they've classified the information and they've figured this out, they're going to represent that information visually, right? You're going to get them to make a case for why they want to do their proposed actions. So they create graphs or they create visual infographics to present their case. Perfect. What else do they learn to do? I think 3 milestones is one. I think after this, I think we should look at, let's assume one of them gets sorted out. They look at solutions. They look at how they can, add solutions to this. Or do they say, okay, let's brainstorm. Let's brainstorm for a solution. Let's add that there. And let's evaluate the solution after a preliminary trial. Roshali, can you think of something else here?
Oh, it's good. Evaluate solution
First level implementation,
or
we
a
try it
first
out.
level
First
implementation.
level
Yeah.
trial, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So what are the things you're doing here? So Bella, your element of helping local community comes in because you're actually going out into your community and doing a survey with your local artisans or your local farmers and the community to looking at how this can be done. Okay. Now, this is where when you're doing an integrated project as teachers, you're going to have a difference. The difference will be if you're a science teacher, what are you going to give more weightage to? And if you're a language teacher, what are you going to give more weightage to? But for the sake of this conversation, we're just saying integrated projects. So if I would do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I would look at 2. Milestone 2 is what I would give weightage. I would give 15% weightage. That Rishali, you want to do 50 or 100?
Let's do 50 or easy
Okay.
100. 100 is
Easy
easy.
is 100. So, okay. So let's do 15 there. Okay. 3 is the information. What is that? What have you done? Classification. Okay. I would put 25.
Identification.
Yeah, I would put 25% there because you're teaching kids how to move and work with data in a very scientific manner of inquiry, right?
Right.
They're not doing hearsay. They've spoken to X number of people. You're giving me already ideas, Sindhu. Yes, Bella. All of us, it's a mutual thing. Great. Okay, so yes, so we identify that 25% for how they classify their data, and let's give them 10% for how they're going to present that data to everyone and present a case for why we should work on this. So they're very passionate about what they want to do. Presentation skills obviously gets covered here. What are we
50%
saying?
done.
50%
And now
done.
evaluation and testing, the pilot will have more weightage, right?
Yes.
So I think we should give 30% to that.
Yes, and the remaining 20% will go to the solutions that the children come up with as part of a team activity system. Now let's look at the checklist that we have. Are we covering multiple subjects here in this case? We planned integrated, right? Are we planning that? Yes. What all subjects are getting covered here? Let's just say this for our own sake. What are the subjects that we're covering here?
We are covering
Environment and obviously,
science
yeah,
or
environmental science.
EVS
Yes,
for that matter.
yes, yes, environmental
Uh,
science. What
we are
else?
using maths for
I'm waiting.
analysis.
I'm waiting for the chat. I'm waiting for the chat. I'm waiting to be told. Yes, definitely. Yes. Okay. Okay, science I get. So now Judy says
English.
English, and I would really appreciate that because English teachers tend to think of these projects otherwise as primarily a very science heavy project, which is actually it's like communication being broken down into parts. How to frame a question, how to do an interview. Communication is big time. Very good. There's math. Yes, Bella, absolutely.
There's art as well.
There is art as well because it's an art of questioning and art of probing as well. It's a skill that children develop because they develop tact. Survey and presentation of data, mathematics. Nina, thank you. Yes, absolutely. Right. And so that's why the complexity would be depending on which stage and what grade you want to give this to. You can keep it simple and complex, spread it across. Now, a reference to a traditional checklist, is it too much to do across 3 months of a project? If I looking back at the checklist, not really. What do we now need to give the children to know that this is how they're going to be assessed at the end of the project? What do we now need to give them? We need to give them weightage. Yes. What else? I haven't used my favorite assessment technique and tool here until now. I'm waiting to be told what it is. Roshali, you can't answer. What are we going to use at the end of a project to assess the learnings and the presentations of the students? Okay, one wild guess. Come on. Rubrics. Thank you. I would do peer evaluation and rubrics. Nina, you couldn't have put it better. Janelin, you couldn't have put it better. Yes, Bella, I would agree with you that if you need to put 40% of the total marks for the subject, I would totally do that, because that is the test point. How much of, and look at the art elements of behavior coming in. I learned to talk to a stranger in a very controlled environment, of course, but I learned to ask questions. I respect privacy. I look at, yes, Judy, criteria. Absolutely. I also then am working in a team. So there's bound to be differences of opinion, right? So great. So fantastic. So yes, we're going to use the rubrics to do the evaluation. Is it too much? Is it too much as a community-led activity that you're giving back? As a project, would it be taking too much time, you think? Evaluation sheets. Evaluation sheets covering what, Judy? What would you specifically cover in an evaluation sheet? Is it... So as a teacher accompanying the students while they're doing their interviews, your evaluation sheets would primarily be observation notes. Yeah, you'd be observing a lot of characteristics that you would want to ensure. Worksheets that I could prepare for certain milestones. Absolutely. Those are end outcome. Absolutely. And you know, the biggest thing in this great thing is how it's going to be presented to parents and to the community after. So this is not just about doing a project, right? It's going to definitely go out there and you're going to talk to parents about it. You're going to cause change in your community. So let's come back to the original topic. Let's look at, it's not too heavy, absolutely. And let's look at the original context. What's the context that we want to do? We want to reduce waste at each step of the way. So how does waste at one element become a catalyst for something else in another environment, right? So can waste from here be, so if I were to use this
compost somewhere
yes,
else.
compost, yes, I was actually thinking of food. Okay, let me correct myself. Let me start again. If I look at food wastage, and all of you would agree that even in our canteens we have a food wastage, right?
Yeah.
Where does it go and how does it get transported before it gets spoiled, or how do we do that? Right? So movement. When does food get prepared? The kind of time that you have that you can move it, conditions under which it can be moved, and collaborating with, at a no cost. How do you collaborate with somebody who will deliver that food perhaps to someone who's more needy and in time while it is still fresh to be consumed? So this whole food chain is not only about how it lands to your table, but how you're cognizant of how it lands to the tables of, to the people who probably need it on an everyday basis. Fresh food coming to them is something that the children will work out. That's one kind of wastage we're thinking about. Second point in terms of wastage would also be what Rishali was referring to, scientific mind, of course. So she refers to composts. Yes. So food can be spoiled. Agreed, Rishali. So yes, goes into a compost. Where does this compost get created? Where does it go? How does it not impact people around that community by virtue of anything, in terms of smell or in terms of anything else? What do you need for that? Who manages that? Where does that final end product finally go to? Does it go back? Yes. Instruments or ways to? Yes, the time element. So these timestamps are important for them to gauge efficiency of this project, right? Did it leave on time? Did I coordinate on time? Did it leave on time? Did it reach on time? Is the compost going back to the farmer at the right time when he needs it, or is it getting wasted? So this whole cycle of being in sync with time is a brilliant lesson that can probably come out of this. And yes, it's a rubrics, and each teacher will have his or her own variances when it comes to the rubrics that you want to create. English teachers, science teachers, maths teachers, speed, time, motion, what movement of a truck is always being just a physics question. Speed has been a physics question in my head throughout my life until you apply it in a different situation, right? Okay. So yes, so this is how we would do this. And this is an activity we'd like you to do sometime in terms of your planning, and then we can make it. Roy will always come back and tell us whether we can share it in what format, as a note to all of you all at some point of time, right? So we'll get inputs from Roy on that. Any questions at this point that you'd like to ask or put in the chat?
So just while they're asking question, this is just to share that this we did the assessment design on a Padlet. We did the assessment design on a sheet. So actually the tool is just a medium where you can express and write the instruction. It's the way you are comfortable with. You can use that tool. It doesn't depend on tool. It depends on you, how you plan and how you execute it, right? So here we did it in a form of Padlet because it's easy for me to show you various categories and add various comments, and it's a nice it's a easy tool for me to use, other than sheet. But of course sheet becomes very easy when it comes to collation and then storing it and so on. So it's your choice, you can use any. Yeah, the presentation of creative output should be showcased during the science fair day. I could cover with the English teacher on the project. Absolutely. And trust me, when it comes to presentation, communication, body language and so on, mapping, like collaborating with English teacher is the most easiest. And for some reason, it's always said in a school that English teachers don't have projects. Every project is an English project. How it can be integrated, how can be clubbed is more important.
And in a case like this, what happens is when you say, we have to figure out where our children look at our existing environments and look at that world being sustainable. We don't need to really leave anywhere. So I'm sure if we look at post-harvest wastage, there's a significant amount of stubble, right, that gets left behind. What all can stubble do? And why stubble fires are a major concern after a point of time. So before such things happen, what can you do to cause a change? Can it be converted into so this is one project that we know definitely that goes on about how we converted stubbles into drinking straws, which are again sustainable and therefore reduced plastic. So depending on size of stubble, it's cleaning, no processing. It's absolutely zero processing, cut, clean, use. How do you promote these kind of activities, and therefore communities grow, and there's newness coming in, and there's marketing too we can build in after a point of time, now that the brain works differently. Yes, there's marketing too that can come in. Media
with
coverage.
with online thing being easy to use, we can ask children to write blogs and maybe articles that they can publish on social media and maybe create a movement on social media. It's now easy to reach out to people if you have a good cause.
Absolutely.
So great.
Yes.
Let me go
Great.
back
Awesome.
to the presentation.
Thank you. Yes, please.
So yeah, this was one example of how we can design an assessment assessment design for a project. So these are the various sections that you need to work on and create a proper design and then share it with students in an appropriate manner so that the information is very clear. You have your outcome in place. Your activities are very inclusive. So your groups are very inclusive in nature. Of course, there is learning happening at every level. There is feedback in between where there are different milestones. You have your formative plan in terms of milestones, and your summative is the final presentation. And what am I forgetting?
The one thing that we haven't covered in great detail is rubrics, because rubrics takes a significant amount of time in terms of development when we're working with you. We can always do that a little later. I'm sure we can come back with that one. But the rubric is probably one of the most brilliant tools there is in terms of giving clarity. So once the rubric is designed, obviously the rubric is also being shared with the learners to help them understand how they're going to be evaluated. So that information sharing becomes critical as well.
Right. Now let's look at one example where this is like an in-class activity or for a particular topic. What are the list of activities that we can do? And let's analyze if that activity is fulfilling the 7 principles that we spoke about.
Yes, let's do the 7 principles recap, and then let's go back, do a double check. We'll come back to the last segment, I think in another 5 minutes. Yeah.
So we want to do a recap. Just hold on a
No,
second.
no,
Let
here,
me
let's,
put.
no, 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 let's do the other examples. No worries. Let's do that.
Okay, we'll do the examples. We are back with World War example. Like I said, I love
Yes.
that topic. When I was a student, I loved that topic, and that love still remains. So, World War II assessment possibilities. So, this is a topic World War II, which we had in school, and now these are the assessment possibilities. A child can write a research paper or an essay to demonstrate. Now, look at the objectives. Okay, to demonstrate their understanding of a particular aspect of World War II, such as causes, role, blah blah blah. The second is presentation. The student will create a presentation on atomic bombing at Hiroshima, Nagasaki. Okay, or a group project where there is understanding of specific aspect of World War, or a simulation or role play for a key event of World War II, or self-assessment where students are reflecting on their own learning and set goals for improvement. These are various assessment possibilities for this topic. Okay, let us take one into consideration. And then let's see how it is getting mapped to the assessment design. First question, can we do all these assessments in a chapter?
No,
Can we do all?
clearly. No, difficult.
No, we can't. And we should not actually. Otherwise, the child will get impacted mentally on World War. It'll be a trauma topic for the child. So, no, we can't do all. So we have to select and see. All the assessments are good assessments here, because they are measuring a very specific learning outcome. All assessments are good assessments. We'll have to pick and choose based on the weightage and the marks that we want to give for this assessment. Okay, if if it's something that you want to give more weightage and more time, then a group project will work. Or a role play will work, because in case of role play, the child or the group will have to prepare the script, they have to enact, then they'll need to create props. It is a very long duration planning. Correct. So role play group project will be a longer duration. So do you want to give that much weightage, that much time? It depends on you. If you want to have different milestones where there are self assessment given. So when once you finish teaching a particular part of World War, you can have a self assessment test or a self assessment questionnaire, or like a reflection tool that you need to give it to students. Okay, or it's a presentation. So presentation is a shorter duration project that you give to children. They have to do a research, then they create a presentation, then they present to the group. So it's like a 1 week or a 1.5 week thing. So it depends from project to project or assessment to assessment, depending on the time and the weightage you have. We can't do all, that's for sure. It becomes a burden. We can so map to learning objectives. So what is the objective that we are looking at? It has to be inclusive in nature. It has to enhance learning. So any assessment that you see here will enhance learning. It'll take learning to the next level, and understanding of the World War II will be more in a child after they finish an activity. Correct? Sindhu, you want to add something?
This is fine. Here, the only thing that we said we would come back to in a little while is any of these segments that we take up over here. Let's also understand somewhere this has to also, we train our children to become digitally savvy as well, right? So eventually, there's a digital portfolio that you would want to create. Very simply put, let's take the project that we decided that we would do, which is food waste reduction. Okay, reducing wastage. Imagine an entire school putting up a digital portfolio on their work, expressing the way they went about doing it. So they're expressing their learning, so metacognition happening. They're going back to why they did what they did. They talk about a reflection of why those activities helped them and how that reflection enabled them to move on to the next steps. The concrete project in itself with evidences. Imagine documenting evidence at an early age and how this evidence helped them to make a sound decision, use of data. So, this and the series of activities where they implemented that project and the results thereof is a wonderful digital portfolio for children to create. And digital portfolios are also a very, what shall I say? They're almost synonymous with complete learning. It's a deep learning activity that gets reflected. Students are proud, school obviously is proud, and parents are extremely proud of their children have been able to put out there in terms of their own learning, and the level of learning that happens, both in terms of retention, application, and further application, is at a significantly higher level. So please do consider that also as an option. While I know it's difficult to cover everything in a 3 hour session, I understand rubrics and digital portfolios are not something we can talk about like in lots, but it is a mega consideration in your planning about how you want this information and this learning to reach folks. I remember Bella ma'am put down, the presentation can happen on a science fair day. Yes, and that's a brilliant another location where it can happen. And the second, obviously, is places like these where digitally it's set in time. Yes, Jollibee, yes. These assessments provide students with the timely, specific feedback that they need to make adjustments to their learning. Very true. And imagine as a teacher being able to help point out exactly what they need to change and not rewrite everything. So that's the advantage also about digital presentations. No rewriting everything. And I know handwritings are going for a toss, I understand, but we are moving into a day and world. How much of time that we are going to spend actually writing in the future is debatable, but as a fine motor skill, it's important, so we retain it because it plays a huge role. Tomorrow you want to be a surgeon. Precision in terms of your fine motor skills is important. So development, yes. Application wise, we need to give them a wider option. Let them definitely look at their adjustments in learning. Yes, Rishali.
So this is how we can create a complete picture. Competency Pyramid, Bloom's Taxonomy, and 7 principles of assessment design will help you to create successful assessment design with appropriate planning where there is no burden. For teachers have enough time to plan and execute, students have enough time to learn, implement, and engage with the activity. So this is like a tripartite agreement, if we can call it that way, that if you follow these three and it completes a picture and create a balanced structure of a triangle for a successful assessment design. Right. So there's a question.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes,
It is. It
absolutely.
is very simple.
It is, and it's a fantastic thing because they go back and they actually see how they've evolved from their learning. There
Yeah.
aren't too many portfolios that you keep if they're physical, because you don't have the kind of space in Edison homes which are smaller. But yes, it's a brilliant, similar to a web page by Wikispaces, and there are multiple options that you have. Free
Three options.
free options.
And you can keep this digital portfolio from grade 1 to grade 10, and you can actually you can have different pages for different grade, and you will see what all work you did. And it's so nice to see the improvement, like Sindhu was saying. You can see what were you doing earlier and now what's the level that you have reached. So thanks to digital, we can actually keep the track record from grade 1 to grade 10 of the kind of work. And it's not only the worksheets, but also maybe video or maybe a role play or maybe an activity. All those records can be maintained on digital files. So it's,
Yes.
it's really a beautiful thing. Yeah.
And teachers can refer to it, right? I mean, you know what goes right with your child. What goes right is more important than what's gone wrong. I mean, you have enough background to look at that child's performance from the previous year and saying, this is the child that did this work. I mean, and if there's a drop in performance, probably you need to figure out and dig deeper why. But yes, digital portfolios are extremely helpful, like we said, for the longitudinal journey of the child's learnings, and for a teacher to go back and look at the child in a previous year or in a previous setting. How did he or she perform?
Absolutely. So, what
And
at
this
this
is, yeah.
stage, and this is the best time where we're talking about the sites and the portfolio, because what I'm going to show you is an example of an execution of a lesson. Okay, it's a lesson that got executed in the way we are talking about the assessment design part. All right. There are objectives. This lesson is taken. I'll just show the PDF. Just
Yeah,
a second.
the source. Yes, let's start with
Yeah,
the
so let
source.
me give credit to the source. It is done by a professor called Dinah William, and it is by Inner School, Blacksburg High School, and Mr. Wilkins biology course. As you can see, it's a bit dated, but the standards and the flow is extremely applicable even today. Okay, so I'm going back to my Canva. I'll be showing you the presentation. I'll be showing you the document, but I need you to focus on the objectives, which are completely planned about what the child is going to learn throughout the lesson. And there are standards also. So if you see, there are standards. So this is their district standards that are there. So the district standards are also mentioned here. Okay, so these are mapped to the learning objective. There is a proper assessment plan. If you see the assessment plan, it is said that there will be exit slips, there will be quizzes and tests. Okay, then there will be KWL chart. KWL chart is it's KWL. Know, what do I know? What do I want to know? And what have I learned? So it is done in two phases. The first phase is K and W. The K and W is, like I said, what you know and what you want to know. And after the chapter gets over, or after that activity gets over, you give the same sheet to the child and ask the child to fill what have you learned. Okay, so KWL chart. So it's mentioned here, know what they want to know and finally what they learned. Then based on the standards, what are the assessments? Multiple methods, data observation, teaching and assessment. So the assessment is planned, and there are milestones for formative, and at the end there is summative exam. Okay, so what we are doing is we are mapping this particular unit plan or lesson plan that is created with the 7 design principles. Then there is this calendar. This calendar defines on each day what is the activity that is planned and the assessment that is planned. So if you see, KWL is an assessment, lab write-up sheet is an assessment, exit slip becomes a formative assessment. Then there is a lab, again lab write-up is there, then model, then there is an activity sheet here, that is an assessment. So this is completely giving the students and the teachers a snapshot of where the learning enhancement is happening, where the assessment is happening, and how is it planned in a manner. So then it doesn't become a burden for anybody. Okay, and of course, at every stage of these formative assessment, there is a feedback involved. Now, just one example here, there's a rubric. So this is a newspaper article that has to be written. So there is a rubric, and for every rubric, there is a weightage also given. Okay, so these weightage, so this information is completely clearly given to the students. And if you see here in this, there is a reflection section that allows the student to think and reflect on what have I learned, and any doubts that I have and which I can work with the teachers. So these are few snapshots taken from that document. So I'll just show you the one lesson plan I want to show you. I'm not showing you the entire piece. So this is the calendar that I was talking about. Having clarity of this is the level of planning that helps in successful assessment design execution. Then we'll be able to do justice to all these assessments, observations, participation, and so on. Okay, and I want you to see the plan. So these are objectives, and based on the objectives, there's an activity and how you are evaluating. This is an evaluation based on the objective. So, yeah, with this,
Yes, here's
we
where
are
we
open
say
to
any questions. Yes, Jollibee, yes. What I want to know, what I want.
What I know.
What I know, what I want to know, and what I learned.
Yeah.
Starting from known to unknown, and then coming back to I learned, so therefore now I know. Nice tool.
So yes,
give it a
any
minute
questions?
in terms of questions at all. Yes, please. Well, okay then.
I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Yes, please. Yes. We're still here, still open to questions if any. Yes, Roy's back.
Yes. Thanks so
Thank you,
much,
Roy.
Vishali Sindhu. That was a great.
Oh, Roy is
Okay,
out of the screen.
Roy's coming back. Roy's coming back.
All right. So that was a great presentation of the framework that we need when we do online assessments, and especially I like the Padlet style where you're able to kind of put it into columns where you can
Yeah.
actually break it down a bit, even just on a thought process point of view. If for our educators here, if you have some challenges, let's say organizing your thoughts, I think just using some of these tools, even a regular spreadsheet is enough, just to kind of map out each of the activities, each of the steps, then how much time you think you will take, and then how you weight the grades. I think that is one way to look at, okay, I have, let's say, depending on the activities you want, you have visual skills, you have hearing skills, fine motor skills in writing if you want them to do, let's say, an art project or something more creative, not always typing on their keyboards. I think,
Totally.
just to vary the engagement, right? Because I think it's so crucial to now, especially I'm sure, young people and learners, their attention span is so is so short. So you
Yes,
have to keep trying to, throw them new things, throw a curveball somewhere so that they
yep,
kind of try something different. And
totally.
I think it's so valuable to even engage on a global level with other educators, because you might, as Miss Bella a while ago, she's learning something new. You might learn from each other as well. Oh, we do
Absolutely.
this in this country, we might be able to do it here, or even a cultural exchange where, oh, I didn't know that this was a thing in India. Might be
Right.
something, in Southeast Asia, in Singapore, in Philippines, in Vietnam, and in Indonesia. We can make it a lot more interesting. Our engagements more, and our assessments a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
I think
And
Bella
not
has a
limit
last question.
ourselves.
No, Bella has
Yeah.
a last question, so I'll just answer that.
Oh yes, yes.
Bella, your question is the exit slips for each activity are considered as assessment tools. Yes, for the teacher, they are a quick formative assessment to gauge the understanding. So if there's a concern to be addressed the next day for the set of students who would have probably not got the whole concept in its entirety. Sorry. Yes.
And that's why it's important to have an objective oriented exit slips. That'll be
Yes.
helpful.
Right. So
Absolutely.
if just keep adding any other questions, and thank you for your comments and
Thank you.
suggestions as well. What I'll do right now, just before we close the session, I just give some housekeeping reminders so that for those who've been asking, I think we had some questions about how to access the resources, if they will be able to get a certificate for this session. So I'll just repeat that for today, the video session, you may join for free. You may also rewatch this. But for access to the actual resources for this session will be included in a course. And this will be a paid course available on AcadAsia. So I'll just share my screen so that I can walk you through the steps on how you can access the resource materials. All right. So let me just share my screen. One moment. Okay. I just have to open my Windows. I have a lot of windows open here. And all right, sharing my screen one more time. Okay. So I hope you can see my screen. All right. So today we covered the Saturday School for Assessment Design Principles with Sindhu and Vishali of Orange Spaces. Thank you very much, ladies. If you have not created an AcadAsia account so that you can access the resources that are included with this webinar, go to acadasia.com. If you have not created an account yet, please sign up as a teacher. Okay, it's very important that you have a teacher account so that you can access the full suite of features on AcadAsia. If you already have an account, please do sign in. So once you've done that, you'll be greeted to your profile page. Very important. Make sure that when you come to your profile page in AcadAsia, complete this so that you can continue using all the other services. Have your profile picture, and of course, here your identity proof. You can upload your teacher's ID, teacher's license, any government ID just to show your proof of identity. And of course, in your professional details, make sure that you put, let's say, if you're part of a school or institution, include that as well. Now, once you've completed your profile, you'll be able to access all the other services on Acad Asia. Okay, one of them is Colab Ed. Here's our social network and chat timeline where you can actually see all the discussions from teachers all over the world. Here, we've already posted the announcement for today's session. And then after that, you go to Skilled. All right, on Skilled, you'll see the list of all the professional development courses with CPD credits and units included here, as well as any other certificates of attendance or participation that you may require, depending on which country you're from. So any educator that joins these courses will get a certificate of participation or a completion from Acadesia Singapore issued to you via the blockchain, sent to your email upon completion of any of our courses. So last time we had Joseph from last Thursday. Today we have assessment design principles with Vishali and Sindhu. So make sure that when you enter the course, you click on it. The first thing you'll see, it will be a paid course. So this is the amount in US dollars, and make sure you add it to your cart. Once you add it to your cart, you'll be able to make a purchase and access all the tools, resources, and other materials, plus the certificate for this session if you need it. Okay, so when you, let's say, go to the cart on Acad Asia, you have two modes of payment. You can choose SandPay, which is any online bank transfer, bank to bank, in which country you're from, or you have a credit card, you can use Stripe. So when you go to use the payment step, I'll just walk through it very quickly. You add your course to your cart, so it'll look something like this, and there'll be a price. And let's say, for example, you use Stripe, it'll be credit card, but for SandPay, for bank transfers, you can use this, for example. And then when you click on buy, so especially for, let's say, our friends in the Philippines, you will see an option to pay via InstaPay, which is our local payment gateway for mobile applications. And then you can pay via GCash using InstaPay. So when you proceed, just make sure to note the details in the SandPay notification. Just note the bank, the amount, the account number, and the partner in that country, because each country has a specific partner to process this payment. Again, take note of the amount to pay, the bank and account number, and the account name of the pay partner. In your mobile app, if your wallet, make sure to click on send and then choose a bank transfer. So maybe in India or other countries, you might have other digital wallets that have a bank transfer option. You can use this option as well. And then within that, within your wallet or mobile app, make sure you select the bank that is indicated in the SandPay step. Okay, so in our case for Philippines, Union Bank is our partner. Fill up all the details that have been required in the beginning, including the name of the partner in that country. And once you've completed the payment, you will receive a successful invoice in your email address. Okay, so when you register for Acad Asia, you'll get your account, your payment, you'll see successful payment to Acad Asia invoice sent. And then in your purchase history in your dashboard, you should be able to see that you've paid for the course. Then once you've paid for the course, it'll look a little different. There's no more add to cart, and you have successfully enrolled. And then you can go through the lessons that we've taken up today. This is an example of what the course materials will contain. You have the stream itself, all the materials, and there are about 4 lessons included in our session for today, including the assessment blueprint templates, links to Padlet, and other Canvas items. All right. So you will be able to access this course for 1 year upon payment. So this is a good thing about accessing all the course materials. You'll be able to access this all for 1 year. So make sure that you sign up and complete the payment steps if you'd like to have your materials and your certificate for this masterclass this Saturday school. All right. So that kind of completes my sharing. If there are any other further questions, you can also email us at support@acadasia.com. I'll type it in the chat, and I'll ask Ethan to share it also with our LinkedIn viewers. So if you have any further questions, to subscribe to this course so that you can get all the materials that are wonderfully presented by Vaishali and Sindhu, please do sign up and access those. All right. So any final thoughts before we close the session? Vaishali, Sindhu, regarding designing online assessments and the principles that are required to design good assessments, or just in general about our experience we had today?
No, so first of all, thank you, Roy, thank you so much, and thank you, dear participants, because they were so engaging and constantly thinking and answering, so that really helped our session. And yeah, so keep it's very important to plan. If you plan, see, of course, when you are in an actual classroom, things might not be the same as you had thought while you were planning, and it's okay. That day might not be the best day, but your planning should be so much that you have a plan B available for you to execute. So it can be in terms of a lesson strategy, or it can be in terms of assessment. So planning is a key to, really be prepared for the worst as well.
Yeah, I
Just
like
mind
what you
it.
mentioned, Risai, about Plan B, because that's exactly what Josep from Spain said as well. You can have a really nice plan, but always have a Plan B, because you never know. Sometimes, let's say, the internet connection or the access, or even in the classrooms, all of a sudden you don't have access to all your tools in face to face. Always have a Plan B. Great,
Yeah.
great advice, Vishali. Sindhu, any final thoughts?
No, no major thoughts. First and foremost, thank you, Acadesia and Roy and team, for the support and putting this out there. Um, Love the energy that comes from these early morning conversations for us, because that's when you're at your best, and that's exactly it, right? If you've got it in a plan, it's there. It's a matter of referring to it after a point of time and not worrying about it. So it's there. It's planned for. It's well documented. It's there. Stress levels come down, and teachers, we know, have their hands full. All said and done, they have their hands full. So a little pre-prep helps a great deal and goes a long way. With plans ABC, absolutely well said. It's been an absolutely great time. Thank you, participants, for all the things that you put in and all the ideas that you've given us. We've learned along the way, even with you. And that's exactly what sharing and communities of practice that we are. We are pretty much communities of practice. The more we practice and the more we share, the more, it makes a better place for every teacher out there to do something unique and wonderful for her students.
Thank you so much, Shindu. Absolutely. As a community of practice, we're so happy to have Orange Slates as part of the Acad community. Many hands make for light work, and so glad to have you with us today. So, on behalf of Acad and the team behind us also managing the stream, we thank you so much. We are so thankful for all of you for joining us today. That ends our Saturday school session. Sign up for the course to get all the materials and your certificate, and we'll see you again next year. We'll have a lot of sessions. We have artificial intelligence. We have sustainability. Then in January and February, a whole month-long set of activities again in our regular weekly webinar series. So see you again. Have a great holidays.
Yeah,
year.
happy holidays to you.
Happy
Happy
holidays,
holidays.
everyone.
Happy
Thank you.
anniversary, Vishai. Thank you so much. All
Thank you
right.
so
Thank
much,
you,
Rory.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Acad Asia. Acad Asia is a Singapore-based impact-driven edtech startup that empowers the largest online community of education institutions and educators in Asia to upskill and reskill themselves to improve the learning outcomes for their 21st century learners. On acadasia.com, educators can access 4 specific services. First, Collab Ed, a social networking service that empowers education institutions to build their international network from all over Asia, and where individual educators can join a wide range of communities of teaching ad learning practice and engage in peer-to-peer learning. Second, Skill Ed, a professional development service that empowers educators to upskill and reskill themselves by accessing more than 1,000 hours of professional development content, all with formal CPD accreditations. In addition to this, academic managers from education institutions can track, measure, and improve the efficacy of all professional development that their faculty access on the platform, thus leading to better learning outcomes for their students. Third, Design Ed, the easiest course builder on the planet. In 5 simple steps, this service empowers educators to build fun, engaging, and quality content for their learners. Furthermore, third-party tools like Canva, Google, etc. are fully integrated right into Design Ed. Fourth, Certify Ed, a digital credentialing service that empowers education institutions to design, award, and track fully verifiable and tamper-proof digital micro-credentials and certificates on the blockchain. Join the largest community of educators in Asia who are already using the platform and sign up for your free lifetime membership at www.acadasia.com today.